Chapter 1229. As he sensed something, his mind was involuntarily pulled into the world within the cup. On one of the 3,000 high platforms on the city walls of Cloud City, a tall and mighty stone statue slowly rose from the platform. This stone statue was the appearance of Chen Guang himself. His upper body was bare, and the muscles on his arms were like coiled snakes. The contours of his abdominal and back muscles were equally clear. Although Chen Guang's physique was not as sturdy as the bodybuilders outside, if a true martial arts expert were to see his muscles, he might be able to understand why he was worthy of being called the world's #1 expert, and why he could become the most powerful martial saint in history. Although the muscles on his upper body were not overly strong, if one looked closely, every line, every piece, and every inch were perfect to the point of being impeccable. He was simply a perfect work of art. Not long after, the upper half of the stone statue was fully revealed. Just the upper half alone was more than 2,000 feet tall. The eyes and brows of the stone statue looked vivid and lifelike, full of heroic spirit, elegant and unrestrained, comparable to Panin, charming all living beings. The latter half of the sentence was all Chen Guang's own adjectives. In short, although they were both human statues, his strongest physical statue was clearly walking a completely different path from the previous acting statue. One could be classified as a little fresh meat, while the other was a standard man. "You brat, your luck is pretty good. You even got lucky this time." Lioli, who was standing in the middle of Cloud City, also turned to look at the stone statue and teased. Chen Guang asked, "What do you mean? If it was still your previous world, it would have been almost impossible for you to get your hands on this statue. Now that the worlds have merged, it's a blessing in disguise for you." Chen Guang only needed to think for a moment. Combining it with what the two players in the car said, he understood immediately. Regardless of why the events in the slaughtering world would appear in the form of special effects, in God of Happiness, regardless of whether there were these scenes or not, he would still only obtain the recognition of a small number of people. There would still be many people who would regard the ancients as unsurpassable gods in their minds. There were also some people who, no matter how realistic a variety show was, would always look at it with doubtful eyes. Others might say that variety shows were like reality shows, and they all had a script. At most, the script of the almighty Superman was more shameless, played more shamelessly, and produced a crazier effect. For example, when he pulled the high-speed rail with his bare hands, it was very likely that there were other auxiliary forces. How could a normal human do that? Due to Chen Guang's long-term good reputation, those who held this view were definitely the minority. But no matter what, this would definitely affect the degree of his recognition, and thus affect the achievement of the conditions for the statue of God. Previously, although he was famous enough and there was nothing wrong with the attention, even if the last half of the fantasy scene was excluded, the audience still held two different views. Those who approved of him, and those who disapproved of him clashed with each other. Now there were more players in this world who knew what was good for them. They did not hesitate to believe that the special effects footage was real, and they were excited because of his sudden exposure as an S-rank player. Players were different from ordinary people. They had experienced many life and death trials, and their understanding of personal strength was on another level. After struggling in the test of life and death, the players' admiration and worship for the strong was far beyond that of ordinary people. Just like during the war, the reason why ancient generals were often praised for their bravery and courage was precisely because in such a special environment, only the strong could move freely on the battlefield. Those who could go through many wars without dying and make a name for themselves until the end were all true powerhouses. They first left behind their deeds, and then were praised by the world. With the spread of the word, the bravery of these generals would naturally be exaggerated, and they would often be 8 feet tall, and their weapons would weigh hundreds of kilograms. Right now, Chen Guang was also facing the same situation. Aside from him, no one had come into contact with the realm of S-rank players. Even if they had watched the video, they wouldn't be able to experience it personally. Therefore, they wouldn't be able to know the exact strength of the S-rank players. When the players speculated about his combat power in their minds, they would more or less exaggerate it. further causing the players' worship of him to become even stronger. With these people's blind worship piling up, it suddenly became the last straw that broke the camel's back, helping him to successfully achieve the trigger condition of the strongest physical statue of God. That's true, but it's still a pity. Chen Guang sighed. While chatting with Liuli, he was multitasking at the same time, focusing his attention on the newly born strongest physical body colossus. The giant statue was still slowly growing up like a spring bud that had just been unearthed. In the time it took to say 2 sentences, the giant statue's waist had completely grown out, and its inverted triangular abdominal muscles were very attractive. Kid, you didn't train your muscles for nothing. Even among the gods in the endless divine realm, there are only a few who have a perfect physical body like yours. Azure teased. Do gods also need a physical body? Are all the gods in the endless divine realm in human form? Chen Guang was subconsciously concerned about this issue. That's not necessarily true. Some gods don't have a physical body, just like the elemental creatures you once saw. In the endless divine realm, there are many different forms of existence that have god-level power. Of course, the most powerful gods would often constantly modify their own bodies in order to obtain more power. In the long history of the endless divine realm, everyone finally reached a consensus. Chen Guang asked, "What consensus?" Azure said very calmly, "The human form with 1 head, 2 arms, 1 waist, and 2 legs is the perfect form with the strongest combat power in this world." Chen Guang was shocked. That can't be right? Why do I feel like the tentacle monster is a little stronger? The reason you think so must be because your imagination has been eroded by too long of a life. Go to hell. I'm not joking with you. Okay. Let's assume that what you said is true for now. By the way, what's with Yi Ting? You seem to know him? Since they were talking about the endless divine realm, Chen Guang happened to remember this matter and quickly asked. Azure nodded. He's very strong. Hearing those words, Chen Guang instantly became spirited and asked. And then? That's all. Huh? Don't you know what happened next? He controls the power of lightning. Oh, and one more thing. He's one of the top 10 god emperors in the endless divine realm. He's slightly stronger than I am. Chen Guang expressed his shock. Is he really that powerful? But I feel that he looks very weak in the slaughtering world. That's because he's only a projection that's suppressed by the heavenly Holy Grail. But I feel like he doesn't have the bearing of an expert. He can't make people fear him at all. 10 god emperors? It's like selling cabbages on the street. Azure suddenly shouted. That's because you're naturally immune to it. Is that so? I'm that strong. I'm that talented. As the two of them were chatting, a section of the deity statue's body unknowingly popped out. The root of its thigh also started to pop out. Then, the look in Azure's eyes started to change. Chen Guang was also slightly embarrassed. So the strongest physical body must only have a physical body. It's fine if my upper body is bare, but what about my pants? F***ck me. Why is the lower half of my body also bare? Looking at this huge stone statue with its bare buttocks, Chen Guang felt a little embarrassed in the depths of his heart. Damn it. What is going on in your head all day long? Azure cursed. Then she said, why aren't you changing the deity statue's image? The deity statue's head was already almost at the knee position. Chen Guang lowered his head to look at his lower body. He thought to himself, this heavenly holy grail is really a roundworm in my stomach. Not only is the face and the contours of the muscles exactly the same as the real person, even the capital of the lower body is done to perfection. Even the blood vessels and tendons on it are cough. Forget it. I'd better change my appearance quickly. Fortunately, the deity statue still has the right to change its image once. Immediately after, Chen Guang raised his arms and shouted. At the same time, he gave the order in his heart. Put on my clothes. As his voice fell, the huge stone statue's upper body, which had already reached a height of nearly 300 meters, rapidly expanded. What was put on was the casual clothes that he was currently wearing. You! Azure turned her head and pointed at the deity statue. She looked like she wanted to strangle Chen Guang to death. Are you poisonous? Chen Guang slapped his forehead. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The deity statue continued to pop up. Clothes were also put on, but there were no pants. It's not that I'm poisonous, it's the heavenly holy grail that tricked me. How would I know that when I said clothes, it would really only give clothes? Most of the time, when we say clothes, isn't it just clothes and pants together? You're silly. You don't know how to express yourself clearly. With the strictness of the heavenly holy grail, if you say clothes, it will definitely only give clothes. Forget it. Now that things have come to this, there's no other way. Chen Guang shrugged. Anyway, every deity statue only had one chance to change its form. Since it was wasted like this, it could only be said that it was fate. He decisively decided to accept his fate. Anyway, looking at himself, he would slowly get used to it. The appearance of wearing thick winter casual clothes on the upper body and bare buttocks on the lower body made the level and temperament of the most powerful deity statue, which was supposed to be incomparably noble and sacred, suddenly lower by a lot. You'll regret it. You'll definitely regret it. Azure turned her face away. She didn't want to look at that damned statue anymore. She turned her head and said meaningfully, but very angrily, "Don't bother about those details. Have you seen David's statue? This is called art, understand? What's there to regret? Anyway, there's no one else here other than you and me. I don't even know where Deercry has run off to." Chen Guang chuckled. He could only put on an expression, as if a dead pig was not afraid of boiling water. At the same time, he started to check the production of faith in his heart. He wouldn't know if he didn't check, but after checking he got a huge shock. What was placed in front of him was a huge surprise. The production of faith in the strongest deity statue was off the charts. Currently, the maximum production of the middle realm deity statue of the Spirit Heavenly Cup was over 54,000, while the production of the one-line sky was over 540,000. According to his previous production, he only needed to gather one more middle realm deity statue of the Spirit Heavenly Cup to pass the test. The debt of over 1.4 billion faith points that he had on his back could be paid off within 2 years. However, it was very obvious that the strongest deity statue of the middle realm deity statue of the Spirit Heavenly Cup had completely surpassed the standard of the second stage of the one-line sky. Its true production of faith was 5 times that of an ordinary one-line sky deity statue, reaching more than 2.6 million a day. This meant that the problem of paying off the debt within 2 years had been solved. In at most 7 months, he would be able to clear off this terrible debt. Chen Guang let out a long sigh. When he turned his head to look at the statue that had no sense of beauty, he felt that it was much more pleasing to the eye. Azure, it's not that I want to criticize you, but the appearance isn't important. What's important is the inner beauty and its usefulness. My entire life is given by this deity statue. Shut up and scram. I'm annoyed when I see you. Finally, Liuli couldn't stand this shameless fellow and charged over to give him a kick. However, Chen Guang knew when to stop and retreated. When his mind returned to the outside world, he was in a very good mood after resolving a long-standing problem. He found everything and everyone pleasing to the eye. On second thought, the new environment he was in was not bad. Take the bus he was sitting on for example. In the old world, China's domestic buses such as Yutong, Golden Dragon, and Asian Star were fine to sit on. However, be it in terms of comfort or mechanical stability, overseas brands such as Volvo, Mercedes-Benz, and Toyota were far superior. It was only because they had an advantage in price that they had the upper hand in China's domestic market. However, it was different now. As early as 100 years ago, when China was still around, China's domestic industrial development had caught up. After the end of the 4-year War of Resistance, it took off. Now, no one in the world would believe that the strongest luxury bus brand was actually the wild horse under Chen Guang's buttocks. To others, the revitalization of the Chinese nation was a long process that required generations of people to persevere and fight for it. It was a great cause that required generations of people to shed blood for it and devote themselves to it until their deaths. However, to Chen Guang, he would be able to complete the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation after he woke up from his sleep. Chen Guang thought happily, "It's only because I'm thin-skinned. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know how to praise myself." In addition, he also had a lot less trouble. Before the world fusion was completed, his enemies who had placed a bounty on his head had basically ascended to heaven. Now that the worlds had fused, they had no chance of coming back to life. The people who were the most miserable were the people from the Sanshin Corporation and the Yamada Corporation. They even lost their country and became the Liaodong province of the old man's country. They probably didn't even remember this enemy of theirs. They would only wonder why important members of their families suddenly died one after another. Just thinking about it made him feel happy. In addition, the Tianguang Corporation was operating steadily. There were still some small problems with morning light environmental protection, but after Teacher Zhuo applied the new photocatalyst technology, all problems would no longer exist. Strictly speaking, the current China was like the United States of America in the past. The photocatalyst technology that he had previously brought out was still 50 years ahead of the world. Now that I'm rich, I have no enemies, and I'm free. If it weren't for what those two players said, it's time for me to enjoy my life. Chapter 1230. Unknowingly, the car arrived at Wujing. When he got off the car, Chen Guang looked at the two players, without batting an eyelid, memorizing their appearances. However, he did not intend to inquire about their names. Merely two E-rank players were not worthy of his attention. Moreover, it seemed that players could not easily let ordinary people know their identities. Otherwise, they would be punished by the system. Although the two seemed bold, they were actually very cautious. Chen Guang did not know them, so he had no interest in scaring them. In addition, the barrier that the two used to communicate should not only block the perception of ordinary people. Other players should not have the qualifications to eavesdrop. As for why he could, Chen Guang expressed his calmness. He was not boasting or mocking. They had already said that the old man was the only S-rank player, so it was natural for him to have some special privileges. Innate level suppression was just like how low-level players in online games would see the attributes of high-level players as skulls and question marks, while high-level players would see the attributes of low-level players as clear as day. Chen Guang directly hailed a taxi and went straight to the location of the Guangding General Office. He did not call anyone in advance and chose to go there directly. When he arrived, the building where the general office was located was still the same. There were no changes to the height and area, but the building's appearance looked more designed. Sure enough, this was the benefit of China becoming stronger. Even its architecture was world-leading. Walking into the main hall of the general office, which was disguised as a multinational company's office building, the beautiful female agent sitting at the front desk was still a familiar face. When the two female receptionists saw Chen Guang, they revealed expressions of ecstasy. They enthusiastically nodded at Chen Guang, and at the same time, they picked up the communication device and said in a tone that was close to tears of joy, "Attention everyone! Attention everyone! The department head is back." Chen Guang's heart skipped a beat. What? Did I hear wrongly? Department head? Although he heard that the Guangding General Office had been promoted to a ministerial level, shouldn't his position still be that of a director? What's wrong? Why did my title change? Right, I have already retired, so my title can at most be Old Chrysanthemum. Apui Old Director, right? Considering the confidentiality regulations, even though he was the former leader, shouldn't he be denied entry? Shouldn't you at least ask why I'm here? What was going on with the two of them, being so ecstatic? With this in mind, Chen Guang walked into the elevator with a belly full of suspicions. He then entered his fingerprint on the elevator and pressed the buttons for several floors at the same time. However, the elevator kept descending and finally stopped at the basement third floor, where the buttons did not show. The moment the elevator door opened, all the employees of the Guangding General Headquarters, led by Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan, appeared in front of Chen Guang. As far as the eye could see, there were more than 300 people standing in the lobby of the 200-square-meter elevator. Everyone was looking at him with incomparable worship and fanaticism in their eyes, making Chen Guang's hair stand on end. I've become more handsome? Became more handsome? What the hell were they doing this for? Minister, I knew you wouldn't leave us behind so easily. The first to speak was actually Xuelin. He came forward excitedly and carefully looked at Chen Guang. His gaze was so attentive that it was like a fanatical painter admiring the authentic works of Da Vinci. "Minister, I knew you would succeed. Now we have hope." Looking at Xue Lin in front of him, especially the light green faith value thread that emerged from the top of his head and connected to the heavenly Holy Grail, Chen Guang could not help but be shocked. This young man was originally a fanatic, but he could actually become even more fanatical? What the hell did I say to them before? And what the hell happened? Chen Guang's heart was full of questions, but since everyone was so worshipping him, he could not reveal the truth that he had amnesia. He could only laugh and pat Xue Lin on the shoulder. "Look at how excited you are. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. All right, everyone can disperse. Go do what you need to do. Work is more important." Therefore, even those who did not have any talent would be able to feel it after being an official for a long time. Now that Chen Guang had used these words, it was really easy to get away with it. After everyone's emotions gradually calmed down, they saw that the minister had a serious expression and was not in the mood for small talk, so they all obediently returned to their respective offices. Of course, it was not that Chen Guang did nothing. In this short period of time, he quietly investigated the situation of everyone present. Those who were supposed to be inner strength experts still had inner strength in their bodies. Even a few of the elites who were originally transferred from the army had some signs of inner strength in their bodies. It was probably because they had been colleagues with the martial artists for a long time. Everyone had a good relationship with each other. Under the new situation, the Jianghu people were no longer as selfish as they used to be. Those who could teach them a few moves were very frank and generous. Of course, it was a little late for ordinary people to learn martial arts at the age of 20 or 30. However, the military elites who were chosen to be by his side were dragons and phoenixes among men. Their qualifications were incomparable to ordinary people. In addition, many of these people had received training from Chen Guang himself in the Shun special training camp back then. It could be said that they had a good foundation. Later, they dabbled in martial arts as elderly apprentices. Although they could not achieve too high achievements, they could practice a little bit of inner strength and barely get started. Sitting in his office, Chen Guang thought about the concentrated lecture he had promised everyone in the old world. Given his personality, since he had said it, of course he had to do it. However, since the entire world was different now, did the previous promise still count? It was not difficult for him to deliver all living beings from suffering, but he was not sure if he had said such words in the history of this new world. In addition, he was now the minister. When Xue Lin mentioned that he would definitely succeed, she was most likely referring to the fact that he had become an S-rank player through God of Joy. However, in the hearts of his subordinates, was he a martial arts expert or a top player? Just as he was lost in his thoughts, someone knocked on his office door. "Come in." It was Xianqin who sneakily peeked her head in from outside. She carefully sized up Chen Guang's office to see if there was anyone else. Then, she flashed in and locked the office door. Looking at Xianqin, who was clearly an adult but was petite and cute, Chen Guang's heart felt a little itchy. If it were in the past, he would definitely have decisively done it first to suppress his shock. They were all adults and what was done was done. There was no need to be reserved. However, the situation was unclear now. He could not be sure what kind of relationship he had with Xianqin in the new world. If he rashly made a move, with this little girl's personality, she would probably explode. "Hurry up. There are many people outside. Let's do something first and then talk." Chen Guang was hesitating. He did not expect that Xianqin, this little girl, would throw away her clothes as she walked forward with a routine tone and gaze. Chen Guang was confused. In the setting of the new world, how did I treat this little girl in the past? Your performance makes you look like a Lolita meat toilet. This you are. In his heart, Chen Guang wondered if he had misunderstood. Could it be that she wanted to cultivate? What are you waiting for? Didn't you practice the true martial arts double cultivation, and have to do it every month? I have calculated the time. It has been almost 30 days since you went into seclusion. Do you want to go crazy? Seeing that Chen Guang was dilly-dallying, Xie and Qin actually started to blame him. Chen Guang suddenly understood. So that's how it is. Is the old man so shameless in the new setting? How can such a stupid true martial arts double cultivation be made up to deceive people? Besides, how am I hiding from the world? Aren't I staying well in my hometown? I thought you were going to find a mountain to live in seclusion. I didn't expect you to go back to your hometown to comprehend the great Tao with your family. When Master was alive, he once said that a true expert should first enter the world, then come out, and then enter the world. I didn't understand it before, but now I understand. Hey, hurry up. I know you don't have a lover in your hometown. Huh, don't tell me you're tired of me already? Do you want me to call Xiao Miao Miao over? Xie and Qin said and twisted her delicate body on Chen Guang's body with great dissatisfaction. Chen Guang thought silently. How could I be tired of you? It's just that you came too directly and abruptly, so I couldn't react. Chapter 1231. It's nothing. Come on, come on. Xie and Qin sat up straight and looked straight at him. You seem to be perfunctory? Not interested. Chen Guang quickly waved his hand. How can that be? Do you think I'm too small? That I'm too thin? That I don't have any meat on me? Chen Guang looked down at her. Although he didn't want to admit it, although he did know that she was an adult, he really felt guilty. In his memory, the first time he had sex with Xie and Qin was when they were in the slaughtering world on Mount Baylor. There were many coincidences at that time. He wasn't such an immoral person at all. Although he had fantasized about it when he first met her, he didn't really take the initiative to put it into practice. How could I? Absolutely not. Your figure is very, very okay. Then hurry up. Okay. After a long time, Chen Guang looked at the computer in front of him in a daze. Xie and Qin had already packed up and went out. She stayed in the office of the ministry minister for more than 2 hours. As long as the employees outside had an IQ of more than 60, they would know what the two were doing inside. However, no one had any interest in gossiping. Instead, they were used to it and didn't find it strange. It was an open secret in the ministry that the minister and the deputy minister were having an affair. Not only was no one dissatisfied with this unspoken rule in the workplace, but many female comrades in the ministry were envious of the deputy minister's treatment. Unfortunately, the minister was too picky. If there was a chance, they would also like to try the feeling of dual cultivation with the minister. He was the most powerful martial artist in history, born with an innate body with 8 extra meridians unblocked, and his legendary Jinwu and Jinwu double cultivation could even help people open up the conception and governing vessels. He was simply a walking walk, okay? Not to mention others. Even another deputy minister often complained in private that the minister favored one and discriminated against the other. He was unwilling to help the common people and would rather let ordinary women who didn't practice martial arts take advantage of them than to generously help those in the pugilistic world who really needed it. The so-called children of the pugilistic world, in ancient times, paid particular attention to quick revenge. In the more open modern society, of course, they would not restrain themselves. Instead, they would be even more indulgent. However, most of the female heroes of Jianghu were too arrogant. Although they had many fellow disciples, it was very difficult for them to enter the eyes of those beautiful female martial sisters, who were regarded as the pearl in the palm of each sect. The minister had appeared out of nowhere half a year ago, and unified the Jianghu with his unparalleled might. He wiped out the evil sects and killed hundreds of the evil sects in one night. He even killed the mastermind Ouyang Tianxing at the peak of Heaven Mountain. At that time, the minister's peerless heroism was deeply rooted in people's hearts, and he became the dream lover of countless female disciples in the Jianghu. Of course, everyone knew that the minister's vision was extremely high. Although ordinary people were eager to try, in front of so many strong competitors, they could only hide their thoughts. Only those who were ranked at the top in terms of appearance among the major sects would have the courage to express their love for the minister. It should be known that when the sects in the Jianghu chose their successors, they usually chose children with outstanding innate talent. Their innate talent was there. When they grew up, even if their looks were ordinary in the sect, they would still be above average when compared to ordinary people. Those female heroes who were ranked at the top in the Jianghu for their beauty were even more top-notch beauties in the outside world. They were the kind that could appear on television without any makeup. It was just like when Xianqin first appeared before Chen Guang. Her appearance was so exquisite that it was like a porcelain doll had fallen from the sky. She had shocked old master Yin Kongguang for a long time. In terms of cuteness, there might not be many female heroes in the department who could compare to Xianqin. However, if there was a beauty pageant and they were to be voted, there were quite a few who could compete with Xianqin and Wu Miaowan. Alas, the minister was indeed the strongest in history. He was quite firm. Faced with everyone throwing themselves at him, he maintained a certain level of rationality and explicitly forbade such behavior. Up until now, Deputy Minister Xian was the only one who broke the minister's wall. The others could only sigh in regret. Of course, the thing that really established Chen Guang's prestige was not just his looks. After suppressing the evil sects, the chaos of the martial artists caused the people in power to panic. The martial artists of the Jianghu were about to break into a great war with the people in power. When a catastrophe was inevitable, the minister did not hesitate to sacrifice his precious body and personally dealt with 2 old men from the core class of the people in power, resolving the crisis invisibly. It was rumored that he had sacrificed a lot in this matter. He did not even hesitate to use the honey trap. Not only did this news not damage his image, it even made him more respected. What kind of emotion and courage did this require? In short, after this series of very nonsensical facts, Chen Guang's reputation in the Heaven Division was now extremely high. Most of it was due to his personal strength, and the other half was due to his charm. Now what troubled Chen Guang the most was that the Guangding General Office was gone. It had become the inexplicable Heaven Division. On the surface, the Heaven Division was just another name for the Guangding General Office, but things were obviously not that simple. Fortunately, the computer in his office had extremely high security clearance. He could look up any information at any time. He pulled out the top secret information one by one and browsed through it at an extremely fast speed. The Heaven Division had been established for a long time, but it was not called that before. It was called the Special Affairs Bureau. The former minister of the Special Affairs Bureau was the evil sect's leader, Ouyang Tianxing. After Chen Guang had personally destroyed the evil sect in Ouyang Tianxing, he had personally acted as a bridge between the martial artists and the people in power, eliminating the potential conflict between the martial artists and the people in power, and allowing both sides to truly open their hearts and work together. In the end, under the conditions of mutual agreement, the Special Affairs Bureau was reorganized, and the Heaven Division was born half a year ago. Chen Guang became the minister, and had been in charge ever since. The initial purpose of the Heaven Division was to provide a place for the martial artists in the world to settle down. At the same time, it was to give them an identity, so that the martial artists could regain the identity of ordinary people. This would prevent the evil sect led by Ouyang Tianxing from causing trouble. At the same time, it would satisfy the needs of the martial artists to move from the dark to the light, and reintegrate into the new era after the rapid development of technology. Technology was advancing, but the martial artists' skills were mostly inherited from their ancestors. If not for the birth of Chen Guang, the martial artists' abilities would have regressed. After reintegrating into society, the major sects could also make use of their strengths and run their own businesses. Whether it was their financial resources or their ability to allocate resources, they were significantly better than before. In order to express their goodwill to the inner force martial artists, the people in power could not help but take care of those who were willing to follow the rules and integrate into society through the power of their sections. Big aristocratic families like the Wen family, which had a lot of history, developed even faster after receiving support. The other small families were doing well too. At least their businesses were doing well. Of course, the martial arts sects that joined the Heaven Division also returned the favor. They sent many of their disciples into the real world to help the Huaxia government solve the problems that ordinary elites could not handle. However, the peace did not last long. About 2 months ago, after a Huaxia scientist captured the God's particle, some special situations that were beyond the common sense of ordinary people, but could be explained by modern physics appeared. That's right, the game appeared. Ordinary people did not know about it, but players from all over the world appeared like mushrooms after the rain. There was no sign that an ordinary person would become a player, but the game still had a clear preference when it came to selecting players. Most of the people who were selected were people who had special talents in certain areas. They were either mentally strong, strong in self-training, talented in physical fitness, exceptionally smart, or had high emotional intelligence. In reality, these people were either successful in their careers or had great potential. Even if they looked like ordinary white-collar workers or office workers at the moment, their potential was quite amazing. After ordinary people became players, they would be summoned into the game, periodically to undergo various tests. During the completion of the mission, or at the end of the mission, they would be rewarded with points that could be used to strengthen their abilities in the game. In addition, every time a player was summoned into the game, their appearance would be reset. Other than the S-rank player Chen Guang, who had voluntarily revealed his identity, no one in the world knew who the other players were. Only players who had signed a contract with each other and communicated with each other in real life could know each other's true identity. Due to the natural territorial nature of humans, players from all over the world quickly formed different large forces in addition to small teams and individual combat modes. Almost all the members of the Heaven Division were awakened. Even without signing a team contract, they naturally became the top team of the Huaxia players. However, in order to eliminate the small number of unawakened members, the Heaven Division also paid a heavy price. Two awakened ones risked unknown dangers and exposed their identities in public. In the end, they were reset by the game, on the spot, and lost their identity as players. After that, the ordinary people who were picked out were transferred. Now the ones who remained here were all genuine players. As for why Chen Guang chose to go into seclusion, it was because of the opposing forces of the human players in the game. The Protoss. Chapter 1232. From the day the game was born, it was the beginning of the competition for resources between the Earthlings and the Protoss. The so-called resources referred to the completion rate of the quest. Each player's contribution in the quest would determine the number of points they would receive in the end. With the exception of a few absolute dragons among men, almost all the human players started at level E. Faced with the Protoss players who were at least level C at the start of the game, the human players were completely suppressed in the corner of the wall, shivering in fear. Every time they entered the game mission, in addition to fighting against the various dangers in the game, the human players also had to guard against the Protoss players. Whether they could survive in the game and make a name for themselves depended not only on themselves, but also on the Protoss players to be merciful and not slaughter the human race. In addition, compared to the scattered human players at the beginning, the Protoss players were stronger and more disciplined. Human players needed to exchange for and sign a team contract before they could form a team. The more members there were in a team, the higher the level of the contract needed, and the more reward points needed to exchange for it. So far, the largest human team only had 4 people. Even a large force like the Heaven might not be able to enter the same mission space, even if they agreed on a secret code outside. It was also difficult to form a temporary team inside. In addition, the Heavens Division, with Aunt May and a few other seniors as the core, managed to form a few sharp knife teams, but the number of people could not exceed 4. However, this was also because the seniors had a high starting point. After breaking through the peak of Pai Jin, masters like Aunt May started out as level D players in the game, which was a little easier than ordinary people. In sharp contrast to the human players, the Protoss players acted in a team mode from the beginning. Every time they arrived in a mission space, they could always find other Protoss players as quickly as possible and quickly form a team. Take Yu Ting's team, for example. In addition to Yu Ting, who was suspected to be in level S powerhouse, there were also several level A players, including the witch Wethany and many more level B and level C players. In the face of such an overwhelming team advantage, the human players had no power to resist at all. They could only struggle at death's door. The Protoss players were extremely domineering in the game. If they disobeyed them, they would kill the humans. Sometimes, even a simple encounter during a mission would cause the humans to be killed. Or even if they were in a bad mood, they would slaughter humans as they pleased. In the eyes of the Protoss, although humans had the same or similar appearance, they did not treat humans as their own kind. It had been 2 months since the game was created, and the experienced or relatively unlucky players had only experienced 5 quests at most. However, most of them did not get much improvement. Just struggling to survive is already very difficult. As for getting more reward points in the quest to enhance their strength, this is too difficult. Obviously, if the human players couldn't think of a way to change the current situation, as time passed, the Protoss would gain an overwhelming advantage, and the humans would have no chance of turning the tables. No one knew why the Protoss cared so much about mission completion and reward points, so much so that they always spared no effort to weaken their competitors, even if they looked weak. No one knew what the game was for, what would happen if they lost, and what would happen if they won. No one even knew what the purpose of the game was, but every player intuitively realized that they had to find a way to reverse the situation. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. No one knew what the consequences would be, but they were sure that it would not be good. As for the scientist who discovered the God's particle and caused the game, he was inexplicably crazy. No one knew the reason. What had already happened, and humans could only adapt to this sudden change as quickly as possible. When things were already beyond repair, the people of Earth showed an extraordinary ability to adapt, and they survived in the game with incredible efficiency. Of course, the chosen ones who could not adapt were eliminated and reset as quickly as possible. Those who could survive in the game had no choice. As for the ordinary people who were not chosen, they had no such worries at all. Anyway, they still ate and drank. The sun rose as usual, and the moon was still waxing and waning. Nothing would change. At best, they would only find that someone around them who was already outstanding suddenly became even more outstanding. They stood out in all aspects of life and work. Whether it was in terms of work ability or personal temperament, there was an explosive growth trend. In fact, it was these people who became players by chance. Although the reward points obtained in the game could not be directly exchanged for benefits in reality, the physical strengthening of the players in the mission and the training of the mind could be perfectly inherited in real life. No one was born a genius or a success. The hardships experienced in the game made players more mature, their thinking became more agile, and they did things more resolutely. When a person with extraordinary talent became impeccable in terms of temperament, success in reality naturally came naturally. People who were curious would take the initiative to ask them, such as, "How did you do it?" and so on. These people would often come up with all sorts of reasons, such as being well prepared, being suddenly enlightened, getting to know a great person, and so on. In short, they would never mention anything about the game to non-players, or they would be reset. In fact, no one knew that although these people were powerful in real life, in the game, they were simply trembling with fear, treading on thin ice, and living worse than a wild dog hiding in a tree hole. As for the reset that made the players change their expressions, it was the same as Chen Guang's initial guess. It was completely deleted, and became a player's memory during this period of time, and then it was replaced by a fictional memory. According to the concept of ordinary people, if a person's memory was tampered with, it was equivalent to becoming a different person. Of course, no one wanted this. At this time, only Chen Guang knew, "Friends, you are really thinking too much. You have become a different person from the beginning." As for Chen Guang's so-called closed-door training, the so-called breakthrough, it was because he, the Minister of Heaven, had stood up when the humans were completely at a disadvantage in this game. When he announced that he would go into closed-door training alone, he, as the Minister of Heaven, had broken through to the peak of B level at the fastest speed among all the players. However, he still could not compete with the Protoss. Before he left, He had declared to the many members of heaven that he would not return until he became an A-level player. In the end, what appeared in front of the world was hi, my God. In the movie, he had used the most direct method to announce to all the players in the world that he had consecutively jumped 2 levels, becoming an S-level player above a level. Although the average strength of the humans was still not a match for the Protoss, at least with him around, the peak strength of the humans was comparable to the Protoss. In the hearts of others, this action of his was equivalent to blowing the horn of counterattack. So when they saw him return, how could the members of heaven not be ecstatic? Silently turning off the computer in front of him, Chen Guang let out a sigh. After spending an entire day, he had finally seen through the huge pile of top-secret information in front of him. Thanks to his powerful intelligence network, the information also summarized the types and levels of abilities of many members of heaven and ordinary players who had come into contact with the outside world. There was also some statistical information on the Protoss. However, the most important point of all the information was the records of his personal actions. Chen Guang silently wiped away his sweat. This fictional history really gave him a high-end idea. Am I so great? Does it mean that I forcefully carried the hope of the entire human race? A walking, living, visible, and touchable savior that should only appear in Hollywood blockbusters? No wonder the power of faith coming from all directions was so strong. Now, every player must have regarded me as their guiding light. I feel that there is a need to continue promoting the true martial dual cultivation to the outside world. I must gather the virgin blood of 72 beautiful female players. Cough cough. Although he knew that doing this might really be able to trick the fanatical fans of the players into throwing themselves at him, Chen Guang was not that thick-skinned. After leaving the Heaven building, Chen Guang drove alone to the headquarters of the Tianguang group. He felt lucky that his family members did not have any abnormal reactions after reading The God of Joy. There was not a single player among them. This does not seem to be something to be proud of. This only means that the people of the Chen family are all mediocre. Forget it, they are all following me anyway. It doesn't matter if they have it or not. Speaking of which, according to the criteria of selecting players in the game, there were a few candidates in Chen Guang's mind. Almost all of them were players. But why haven't any of them called until now? Is it because everyone knows that I am in seclusion? Then the news of my return to heaven should have spread. They should have some sort of response, right? Just when Chen Guang was thinking about this, his phone suddenly rang. Lowering his head to take a look, he grinned. As expected, I knew it was you, little Lin. Chen Guang answered the phone. From the other side came Lin Jingwei's voice. He sounded slightly tired. Brother Guang, you are finally out of seclusion. Of course, Earth is still waiting for me to save it. We really didn't expect that. When are you coming back to school? Chen Guang pondered over Lin Jingwei's choice of words and thought. Could it be that Bai Nyangzi and Xiong'er were also players? Forget about Xiong'er. After all, he was born with the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear. When it came to martial arts, perhaps Xiong'er could not be compared to Chen Guang. But he was definitely not someone who could be compared to just anyone. But what about Bai Nyangzi? Just based on his incomparably poisonous ability to write deceitful web novels? That's right. Bai Nyangzi's awakening ability must be like this. With a swoosh, he would throw a book at someone's face. Then, the book would expand with the wind and float above the person's head. Large gilded words would fall like raindrops. After hitting the person's head, all sorts of negative buffs would be cast. Stamina -2, IQ -2, EQ -10, mood -100. Chapter 1233. Thinking about it this way, it seemed like he was quite powerful. The legendary negative buff super support? Thinking about it this way, it seemed like Bai Nyangzi's ability was very powerful? Forget it, I'll find out when I see them later. Thinking about it now is just a waste of time. When Chen Guang arrived at the Tianguang group, it was already past 11 at night. There were not many people in the headquarters except for a few small fish and shrimp on duty. Seeing him return, the few employees on night duty were first shocked. Then their faces lit up. Boss, why are you back at this time? Do you want us to inform the other bosses? One of the administrative employees asked. Chen Guang shook his head. Forget it, it's too late now. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'll go to my office and rest for a while. Chen Guang waved and turned to walk 2 steps before turning back, as if he had thought of something. Oh, right, in the company. Is there anything unusual recently? The administrative employee looked confused. He scratched his head and thought for a while before saying, something strange happened. Last month, a few people resigned together as if they had agreed on it, but what? Chen Guang could not help but ask when he saw that he wanted to say something. Now that the company had grown in size, the number of employees had also increased. Now, the total number of employees had unknowingly exceeded 300. People coming and going were common, so there was no need to make a fuss about resignations and new employees. As long as it was not the core backbone, it was not strange for lower-level employees, or even middle-level employees to resign. Just like some people whose hometown was elsewhere chose to work at the Tianguang Group after graduation. Although the pay was good, it was inevitable that they would be homesick as a guest in a foreign land. Or they might have a wife who was not from the country, or their husband might be returning to Shanghai. Everyone had countless reasons to choose to leave. The employee thought for a while and said, but in the past few days, most of the people who left previously have expressed that they want to return to work in the company. I don't know what they are thinking. Oh, right, the company clearly has no plans to recruit people recently, but suddenly a lot of people have come up with ways to work in the company. Many of them don't even want a salary. At this moment, Chen Guang came to a realization. Most of the people that left were players. As for those who wanted to join the Tianguang Group without a salary, there was no need to mention them. They were all newbie players who wanted to ride on his coattails. In Chen Guang's previous memory, ever since the world changed, he had been in charge of the heavenly ministry for a long time. He didn't care much about the Tianguang Group. It seemed like the employees who became players at the beginning didn't know what was going on with him. They probably wanted to take a break from work and spend more energy on the game, so they chose to resign. However, they did not expect Chen Guang to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. His boss was truly worthy of being the most talented genius in the world. He had actually become an S-class expert, and had even announced his identity to the outside world. Before this, there were indeed countless people who had speculated that if people with extraordinary talents would be selected by the game to become players, then there was no reason for almighty Superman Chen Guang, a super genius who could be number 1 in the world and number 1 in history, to be an undiscovered gem in the vast sea. However, there was no one in the game who could completely suppress everyone else's talent. After the game came, Chen Guang himself was too low-key. Many players could not help but think that perhaps Almighty Bro had displayed too much talent before, causing him to drop the ball at the crucial moment when the game was selecting players. He might not have become a player. It was with this thought that a few players in the Tianguang Group chose to resign, planning to find a way to survive on their own. Of course, it was not that no one had placed their hopes on him. In the history, that never happened. The players among the fanatical fans of Almighty Superman had extraordinary confidence in him. They believed that he would definitely stand up and save the day. No one could understand how excited these players and fans were when they saw God of Joy. It was like when the world was dark and life was about to lose all hope. Someone had suddenly parted the dark clouds for them, allowing the sun to shine down from the sky. Now that Chen Guang had staged the return of the king, as long as these employees were still sane, they would all want to return to the company. It was reasonable for other casual players to want to join the company. Although being a solo straggler was free and unfettered, the encounters in the game had long since erased the arrogance of these prideful people. So what if they were capable? So what if they were talented? So what if they had great potential? Anyway, they would encounter the Protoss as soon as they entered the game. Even the weakest Protoss was a C-class player. Their attributes, skills, and combat power could be said to be overwhelming. Anyone would lose their drive. Joining the Tianguang Group would mean being under the wing of humanity's only S-class player. Faced with such a temptation, anyone would be tempted. It's okay, I understand. Have they all joined the company? Not yet. Chairman, you said that the company isn't a market where you can come and go as you please. This matter will have to wait for you to come back and make a decision. Old you is right, it should be like this. You go ahead, I'm going to rest. Chen Guang nodded, waved his hand, and returned to his office. If one were to look at it from the perspective of a normal company, Yu Hong's thinking would be that of an administrative department head. Could it be that old Yu had not awakened? Logically speaking, this was not possible, right? Chen Guang prided himself on having a pair of discerning eyes. Putting aside the other people in the company, the four great generals were definitely talented people. If the others could become players, there was no reason for Yu Hong to be left behind. Then, could this be a judgment made by Yu Hong as a player? Thinking of this, Chen Guang was a little puzzled. Shouldn't the more players in the company the better? Forget it. I'll find out when I see the four of them tomorrow. Collecting his thoughts, Chen Guang turned on his computer and logged into his top-secret account as the Minister of Heaven to look up information. When he logged into his account outside, the security level was slightly lower than in heaven. There was less information available, and the highest level of top-secret files were missing. But this was not important, because there was only one item in the top-secret file, which was information related to him, the minister. From social relations to whereabouts, it was all there was. To this, Chen Guang could only shrug his shoulders, indicating that he was calm. How could he not know where he was? Heaven had hundreds of members, and the many sects that joined Heaven had more than 100,000 members. Although these people did not have the qualifications to come to the headquarters, nor did they have the qualifications to listen to Chen Guang's lectures, they were still on the Heavens list. The various sects also required the disciples and workers to report any information they gathered. They were not allowed to keep anything to themselves. The range of information was also very wide. This included who or what people or protoss you met in this game mission, what you said, what you did, what abilities the other party displayed, whether you were in a team, whether you formed a temporary team or a contracted team, and so on. Everything was available. Based on this information, Heaven organized and analyzed a lot of useful information. At the moment, there were more than 500,000 human players on the list, but this was definitely a small number. It should be known that among them, just the Heaven and its outer members numbered close to 100,000. In addition, according to the information, it was not only China that had the Heaven. Other countries around the world also had similar official organizations, and they all represented the power of the country. The scale and number of people of these organizations might not be as large as Heaven, but their strength was not to be underestimated. There were close to 7 billion people in the world. Which family did not have a few geniuses? But even if there were so many organizations around the world, people with families were still the minority. Most people were still in the wild. These wild forces were extremely scattered, but their numbers were the largest. They were spread all over the world in small teams, individual experts, and so on. For example, the 2E-level rookies that Chen Guang met on the bus should be classified as wild players. Although these wild players were the ones who suffered the most losses and performed the worst in every mission, it was hard to guarantee that there would not be some amazing experts among them. For example, another top expert, Wen, who was placed high hopes on by the people of the pugilistic world, had now become a wild player. No one knew where Wen had gone. Ever since the start of the game, there had been no news from her. Her whereabouts were uncertain, and even the Wen family could not contact her. But without a doubt, with Wen's ability, as long as she was not unlucky enough to bump into the muzzle of the Protoss from the very beginning, her growth rate would definitely be much faster than the top team leaders of the Guangding General Headquarters. It was even possible that she had the strength of a C-level right from the start. Other than the large official organizations and wild forces, the information also showed the existence of another very mysterious organization. It was somewhat similar to a religion but also different. This group of people was considered to be potential members of a religious organization. Although these people did not seem to have organized themselves in a systematic way, according to the analysis of the intelligence personnel of Heaven, as time passed, they would come together sooner or later. This was because these people all had very obvious common characteristics. Their awakened abilities seemed to be of the same origin, and there were great similarities. This was obviously not normal. Everyone might be good at similar things, but the probability of them clashing was too high. So high that it was very strange. So far, Heaven had collected more than 500,000 players' information and conducted a unified summary analysis. Among them, there were 10 types of players' abilities that were suspected of clashing. For example, racing, it was not just cars. In any case, these people's awakened abilities could not be separated from the things that run on land. If they were fighting alone, they might try to get a vehicle from the beginning of the mission. Then, even if they didn't do anything, they could just drive around, run and hide from people. They could often muddle through until the end of the mission. Even if they didn't get anything, at least they wouldn't die. If they were lucky enough to form a team with others, then it would be amazing. They were simply natural vehicle drivers in the various large teams. If everyone could gather their reward points to exchange for a powerful vehicle, they would be able to bring an entire team to gallop on the battlefield. Their survival rate was extremely high. In addition, there were more than 1,000 people whose abilities were piano. The awakened abilities of these pianists were also not trivial. Even if they were only E-level pianists, as long as they were given a good piano, they could greatly weaken the enemy's strength on the battlefield or increase the combat strength of their own teammates. According to the current statistics, if an E-level pianist played a Steinway piano on a truck controlled by an E-level driver, he could even radiate and restrict the abilities of dozens of D-level players at the same time. There was also a type of player. They were real players who could summon the abilities of a character in a game called Dota in the game. There were also pilots, but these people were very miserable. The reward points needed to exchange for a flying vehicle were too high. There were also microsculptors. There were also dart players. These people were powerful and could often become the main long-range attack force of various teams. There were also some people who had exaggerated arm strength and were called Chilean arms. There were also some people who were particularly good at communicating with people. They could even communicate with small animals in the mission space to obtain information, and so on. There were also some people who were particularly good at acting. When they could not get along in the game, they could stand in the corner and act like an exhaust pipe. If someone walked past them, they would not be able to recognize them. The most powerful of these people were the type of people who did not have obvious awakened abilities. However, their physical bodies in the game were extremely tyrannical. Even if they were only E-level, they could withstand several attacks from a C-level Protoss and not die. In short, these suspected ability users covered a wide range of areas. They even overlapped with the members of Heaven. The total number of these people added up to more than 100,000 people. The management of Heaven's intelligence agency gathered these overlapping ability users and asked them how they did it. They were all at a loss. But now Chen Guang revealed the answer. Damn, isn't this the ability of the old man's 11 statues? In other words, these people might not have been selected to become players, or they might have awakened other abilities. However, because they worshipped the old man's abilities in certain areas, when they were selected to become players, they were tacitly chosen to be the target audience of the old man's statues? I don't know what's going on, but this is very much like a cult. Don't I have 11 statues? Why are there only 10 abilities radiated out? Oh damn, luckily my pile driver was not trained in the real world. Otherwise, I don't know how many people I would have killed. Speaking of which, in this game system, the performance of the world's 4 major religions was not very good. There was actually no organized formation of players. In fact, they were not even as good as the old man's statues. Forget it, this is not important. Chapter 1234. Turn off your phone and go to sleep. The next morning, Yu Hong and the rest of the Tianguang Group's 4 great generals heard that Chen Guang had finally returned to the company. They did not dare to be careless, and waited outside Chen Guang's office early in the morning. As the boss of such a large company, Chen Guang's office was well equipped with facilities in the break room. Stretching his body on the 3-meter bed, Chen Guang leisurely got up and washed up. When he was done cleaning up, he opened the door to his office and was about to order some breakfast. However, he saw the 4 great guardian warriors standing outside looking at him. "Boss, you're back." Lu Xiaoyang reacted the fastest. He appeared in front of Chen Guang almost as soon as he opened the door and greeted him respectfully. The other 3 rolled their eyes when they saw Lu Xiaoyang take the lead again. However, they were not slow and their attitude was quite on point. Chen Guang wanted to go downstairs, but since the 4 of them were already there, he had to make things clear first. Therefore, he waved his hand and said, "Come in. It looks like you guys have a lot to talk to me about." The 4 of them wanted to say something after entering the door but stopped. Chen Guang waved his hand first. "Let's talk about the company first. I heard some things last night, and I need you guys to tell me more in detail." When the 4 of them heard Chen Guang's words, they instantly understood that Yu Hong was the first to report the company's recent developments to Chen Guang. Although the world had changed, Tianguang Group was doing quite well. It seemed to be even better than in the old world. Apart from the businesses that Chen Guang had developed in the past, Tianguang Culture, which was a subsidiary of the company, not only had Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage, but also dozens of first-rate, second-rate, and third-rate artists in the country. There were even more trainees. Unlike the old world where China's entertainment industry was completely dominated by Europe and America, thanks to China's strong national strength in the New World, the Chinese language was very popular around the world. It even seemed to surpass English. The influence of China's A-list and super-list artists overseas could not be underestimated. Tianguang Culture's market value had reached tens of billions, just from the management contracts of some of the top artists. In addition, unlike in the old world, where Tianguang Media had many IP resources that had yet to be developed, in the new world, the company perfectly integrated Tianguang Culture's artist resources with Tianguang Media's IP resources, making the development of the company's resources extremely smooth. Apart from the current global hit variety show Hi! My God! In addition, the Tianguang Group was behind many popular TV shows and movies in the world. Of course, the main resources of the company's headquarters were still poured into Chen Guang, and they went all out to develop the valuable assets left by Chen Guang. Everything he had done in the past was an IP that the company could develop. Every image he left behind could be extended to many variants of IP addresses. For example, the miracle he had left on the Hong Kong racetrack had even been adapted into a movie, which had been completed and was about to be released. The male lead was the company's A-list top star. Of course, he could not be the kind of fresh meat who had no acting skills. He had to be a well-known actor who was slightly older than Chen Guang's actual age. In addition, the piano recordings he had played had already been sold all over the world after obtaining the piano music copyright. Women, which had just been screened in North America, could still generate tens of millions of yuan in profits every day in other continents around the world. The market derived from the audiovisual materials and copyrights was even wider. It was simply a money-making machine. In addition, some of the pencil micro-carvings that Chen Guang had left behind had been placed in many museums around the world. As many people went to visit them, the rentals of these works of art were not free, and they were also generating profits. The Huaxia Darts Academy, which was jointly funded by Tianguang Group and Exinqin's Qinjue sect, had also been officially operating. There were branches in major cities all over the country, and they were only free of charge for talented students. If ordinary people wanted to learn, they would have to pay the tuition fees themselves. Successful students had 2 choices. They could consider joining the Qinjue sect, or they could develop in the direction of professional darts. Even if they chose neither, at least they would have an additional skill that seemed useless in life, but would be like a fish in water when they entered the game. Well, you've done a good job. I'm very satisfied. After listening to Yu Hong's report, Chen Guang nodded with satisfaction. No wonder the rich often got richer, and it was harder for the poor to make a comeback. Wasn't this the reason? When the accumulation of personal wealth and resources had reached a certain level, he didn't need to spend too much energy. He only needed to make a decision on a big decision, and he could get rich without doing anything. Tianguang Group was not like an ordinary listed company. There were no equity disputes, and there was no fear of market turbulence. He could completely sit back and relax. After that, Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoliang also reported on the internal and external affairs that they had been in charge of recently. In fact, it was not that Chen Guang had become interested in managing the company. He was just curious. In the old world, the two of them had been busy with women in Europe and the United States. Chen Guang had only returned a little earlier. After listening to the two of them, Chen Guang could not help but applaud the perfect fusion of the old world and the new world. The two of them had been in the United States and back at the same time as in the old world. Whether Chen Guang was in seclusion or not did not affect the two of them from fulfilling their duties. Be it the screening of women, the copyright operation of the drama Romeo and Juliet, or the overseas promotion of the variety show High God, the two of them had not missed a single one. They had done more than what Chen Guang had requested, and more than what they should have done. For example, as the head of the Public Relations and Publicity Department, Lu Xiaoliang could lie down and do nothing under normal circumstances if he did not want to manage things. However, he had never been idle. In fact, he did not even need Chen Guang to make arrangements for him. He could find Chen Guang's needs and take the initiative to do things. For example, during the movie's release period, Tianguang Group's product output would also be accompanied by the extension of Chen Guang's personal brand. In that case, they had to pay attention to the public opinion regarding Chen Guang. Where there were people, there would be people, and where there were people, there would be benefits. If Chen Guang's Tianguang Group wanted to obtain more benefits, it would inevitably occupy the space of others. Just like the movie market, the logic seemed simple. If a movie was filmed well, there would naturally be attendance. If there was attendance, there would naturally be showtimes, and there would naturally be box office sales. It could only be said that the above logic was too simple. It was the same everywhere in the world. There were only so many cinemas, and the audience only had 24 hours a day. If one movie occupied a high number of showtimes, the other one would naturally have a low number of showtimes. There were countless similar situations. Therefore, even though Chen Guang's reputation were at its peak, those who disliked him, or felt that they had a conflict of interest with him, had always thought of ways to discredit him. Otherwise, it was impossible to know a person's heart. There were 1,000 Hamlets in 1,000 people's eyes. A person could never be liked by everyone at the same time. Master Fan had once said that the amount of praise one could take was the amount of slander one could take. In other words, there were as many people who liked him as there were people who hated him. Perhaps there were more people who liked him, but it was undeniable that there were still people who hated him. Especially now that China was powerful in the New World, and the influence of Chinese stars was even greater. Correspondingly, there were more overseas fans than in the Old World, and there were also many overseas haters. The fighting power of the imported haters was not inferior to that of the domestic haters. In the past 2 months, Lu Xiaoliang had been busy enough. He had almost died from overwork. If not for... Alright, that's all I know about the company's regular business. By the way, I heard that a lot of people resigned some time ago, but recently they wanted to be reinstated. Then, many people submitted their resumes to our company at almost the same time. They even wanted to work without pay. What do the four of you think about this? Finally, Chen Guang got straight to the point. As he spoke, he also looked at the four's expressions. At the moment, he was not sure if all four of them had awakened as players. He could only test the waters first. Chen Guang was not afraid of being punished by the game. He had no secrets now. However, he had another worry. He was said to be an S-rank player, and his attributes were too strong. If ordinary people heard about it, it would cause them to have their memories reset. Wouldn't that be a scam? The four Vadras looked at each other. They could read from each other's eyes that a huge burden had been lifted from their hearts. This time, it was Yu Hong's turn to speak. Boss, those who resigned were all players. Those who submitted their resumes were also players. Yu Hong did not hide his words from the other three people. Chen Guang grinned. So it seems that the four of you are also players? Yes, boss. That's right. Lu Xiaoyang said. Boss, we are very strong. Feng Tianyu said, Boss. Dog 3's awakened ability is transformation. Chen Guang was very curious. He had never seen a transformation ability before. Transformation into what? Feng Tianyu chuckled. Three-headed Pekingese. Lu Xiaoyang was furious. Go to hell. What do you know? My ability is called the infant three-headed hellhound. Chapter 1235. So scary, so scary. Even my sister's poodle at home is louder than you. Let's not talk about your teeth. We asked you to bite the weakest monster, but you almost beat it into a husky. If we didn't save you in time, you would have died on the spot. Feng Tianyu was not afraid of the angry Lu Xiaoyang at all. He was still very arrogant. Believe it or not, I will bite you to death. Lu Xiaoyang turned around and looked at him fiercely. It seemed he would pounce on Feng Tianyu and bite him. Su Li suddenly said, Feng Tianyu, stop mocking Lu Xiaoyang, you lighter. At least the three Pekingese can do some scouting in the mission. You're the one who's completely useless. Right. When I fight, at least I can bite people. When I have nothing to do, I can transform myself to spy on the situation. Although my three heads don't look very elegant, they can see everything and hear everything. Your stupid lighter can only be used to light a fire when people are hungry and want to eat barbecue. I am not bragging, but I have learned how to survive in the wild. Even without you, I can still make fire by drilling wood. It is obvious that you, Feng Tianyu, are just like a fire stick. Damn, I will burn you to death. I will bite you to death. Yu Hong couldn't stop the two people who were about to fight with each other. Finally, Chen Guang coughed slightly, and the two people quieted down immediately. Enough. Both of you shut up. The eldest brother has as many pockmarks on his face as the second brother. Oh, by the way, there is something I am very interested in. Everyone else, shut up. Let me tell you. Hearing Chen Guang's order, Buttface and Feng Tianyu finally quieted down. However, they still looked at each other with annoyance. Chen Guang didn't know what to do with these two enemies. Then he turned around and looked at Yu Hong. Yu Hong lowered his head and coughed awkwardly. He felt quite embarrassed. Boss, you can ask me anything. I am the leader of our team. Basically, I know everything. Well, according to what you said, the four of you are in a team, right? Did you guys get 4 team contracts? Chen Guang was very surprised. Didn't the data show that there were at most 3 people in a human team? Does this mean that these 4 fellows silently walked to the front of everyone? So awesome? Could the old man's Tianguang group produce such a talent? This time, the way Chen Guang looked at the 4 of them was worth pondering. It was as if he was appreciating their potential. It was the old man who was rash. The old man had underestimated you. That boss, this matter is very strange. We also know about the existence of the party contract. Everyone else has to sign the contract before they can be assigned to the same mission every time. According to the statistics of some of the core members of the company, there have been at least hundreds of different game spaces. But we seem to have completely violated this rule. We are always together, but the others are not like this. Yu Hong explained further. Chen Guang pondered for a moment. This matter is a little strange, but it's already an established fact. There's no need to keep dwelling on it. Boss, you are wise. Feng Tianyu raised his arms and shouted decisively. Chen Guang and the others turned around and looked at him. Chen Guang couldn't help but say, Feng Tianyu, your flattery is a little embarrassing, isn't it? I'm just spouting nonsense. Feng Tianyu laughed. A little bit. Chen Guang asked again. By the way, you said that there are other players in the company? How many are there in total? Yu Hong was still handling this matter. There are about 20 to 30 registered players, but I guess it's definitely more than that. There are more than 30 people who resigned and want to be reinstated. Boss, you know that we can't let ordinary people know that we are players easily, so it's very difficult to determine whether they are players or not. Okay, I got it. I'll handle it later. First, tell me about your awakened abilities. The 4 of them said one after another. Lu Xiaoyang was indeed a 3-headed hellhound in the transformation department. The baby in his mouth did look like a Pekingese, but according to him, His awakened ability had a lot of room for growth. If he was lucky enough to live to S level, the real three-headed hellhound in golden armor would be born. At that time, his body would be bigger than a mammoth. It was said that he could run as fast as lightning, and his claws and fangs could even break gold and stones. It was said that when he reached the peak, he could also master the ultimate ability of the Demon Clan, the legendary space travel skill. As for Feng Tianyu, he was insulted by others as a lighter just now. His ability was called Flame Spirit. It was said that when he became powerful, he could turn his whole body into flames and be completely immune to physical attacks. The higher the level of the ability, the higher the temperature of the flames, and the wider the coverage. As a veteran who had watched the One Piece cartoon, Chen Guang pointed at Feng Tianyu and gave him a new nickname, Icefang Di Mudhowl. However, Feng Tianyu felt that Chen Guang's statement was biased. He always believed that he was a noble high elf, and he even added the title of prince. He also insisted that somewhere outside the game, there was a kingdom waiting for him to inherit, and he would become the legendary Flame Spirit King. Su Li's ability was not as external as Feng Tianyu's and Lu Xiaoliang's. Even if he used it, no one would know. Su Li's work in the real world had given him an extremely strong logical thinking ability. In the game, his ability in this aspect was displayed to the extreme. However, it wasn't a simple analysis. Instead, he was able to intuitively see through the situation in front of him, from the ways of the world to the changes in the environment, and predict what would happen next. Right now, he was only at level E, so he could only foresee what would happen 1 minute later. However, this was already quite terrifying for a game mission. This was also the main reason why the four of them could survive the game without any injuries from the very beginning, even though they were only at level E, and they could see level D right in front of them. It was said that if he was promoted to S level, he could even predict what would happen 1 day later in the game. This would make him invincible. In addition, Yu Hong's ability seemed to have the least combat power, but everyone agreed that this was the most bug-like ability. Even Yu Hong himself could not stand it. Players could spend reward points in the game to buy items or upgrade their abilities. For example, upgrading from E level to D level required 20 reward points. However, Yu Hong's ability was very strange from the beginning. It was very similar to the ability of a capable minister in the glorious Three Kingdoms. The explanation card stated that through a more reasonable and detailed distribution, he could spend less reward points in the shop. Yu Hong himself did not know how detailed this so-called detailed distribution was, but the effect was obvious. Now, if he were to spend it in the shop, for example, from E level to D level ability enhancement, the original price would be 20, and the current price would be 10% off, and it would only be 18. You would not be fooled by 18 yuan, and you would not suffer a loss if you bought it. Ahem. In short, if Yu Hong could reach S level, he would be able to spend a terrifying 50% off. If there was a boss behind the shop system, he would tremble at the sight of Yu Hong. This was simply terrifying. Many a little makes a mickle. Just this ability of Yu Hong's was enough to develop an entire team. After listening, Chen Guang pretended to be calm, waved his hand and said, "That's it for today. I will think of something later. You guys go ahead." After understanding the situation, Chen Guang said goodbye to the four of them. He was a little hungry, so he decided to go and have breakfast first. When he went downstairs, he thought to himself, "My 4 King Kongs are all ruthless characters. Although these 4 guys looked like noobs now, their ability combination was really a natural big team boss level." In addition, it seemed that this so-called game space had been modified. In the game setting of the killing mission, players did not have abilities when they were E level. After the first enhancement, they would become D level, and then they would have different abilities. But now, it seemed that everyone was given an initial ability when they first entered the game. Players did not have the right to choose freely. This was both a good and a bad thing. There was basically no change in the price level. It seemed that to upgrade from D level to C level, they would have to prepare at least 2,000 points. In addition, with the intelligence and ability of this team of 4, they had gone through a total of 4 game missions so far. And yet they had not accumulated 18 points per person. It was simply unbelievable. Chen Guang did not experience the current game mission himself. He could only guess that after the modification, the difficulty of the game had decreased, and at the same time, the rewards had been weakened to a certain extent. It was very difficult for players to improve their abilities. In short, it was the first game mission that he personally led a team to experience. It should be the legendary super difficult version of the game. The rewards were generous, and the difficulty was exaggerated. If it wasn't for him, not to mention the human race, even the Protoss led by Yu Ting would have been wiped out. It sounded like it was very powerful, but how strong could the old man, who was now in S level, be? While stuffing fried dough sticks into his mouth, Chen Guang could not help but complain to himself. Am I already abnormal? Why am I suddenly looking forward to the game mission? No, this is an illness, I have to treat it. Speaking of treatment, what has Sister Tang Ying been busy with recently? Chapter 1236. It was rare for him to take the initiative to call Tang Ying, but it was an empty number. Chen Guang was baffled. He had no idea what was going on. Maybe Tang Ying had changed her number after the world integration, but he couldn't follow up on it? Or maybe she had changed her number on purpose to focus on her work, because the Biology Research Institute, that she created with Moorlands and Gokyo University, had officially started operating. However, based on Chen Guang's understanding of Tang Ying, if all 4 of Tianguang Group's leaders could awaken and become players, then there was no reason for her to fall behind. So, as long as she became a player, it was impossible for her to remain unmoved after reading the 4th episode of God of Joy. But why didn't she contact him? Forget it, she must have her own reasons. If it really didn't work out, he could go to the police station to look for Sister Wu Tong. The two of them were best friends, so he couldn't possibly not contact her. Also, he could observe Sister Wu Tong's current situation. Maybe she was also implicated. After making up his mind, Chen Guang focused his attention back on the players in Tianguang Group. According to Yu Hong's description, there should be more than 50 players in the company. There were 300 employees in the company, and more than 50 players. Chen Guang was stunned. The number of players was way too high. He could only hope that it was a coincidence. If it was a common occurrence, then it would be really scary. After breakfast, Chen Guang didn't return to the company, but went straight to school. An hour later, Chen Guang, Sun Xiaoxuan, Lin Jingwei, Bai Fan, Xiong'er, and Gaoya met up in the woods by the Yuanming Lake. Chen Guang was mentally prepared that his 3 best friends could awaken and become players, but he didn't expect Sun Xiaoxuan and Gaoya to be involved as well. This was unexpected. That was not the end of it. When these people entered the mission space, they were in the same situation as the 4 people from the Tianguang Group. In fact, it was even more exaggerated. Because there were 5 of them, they were always assigned together when they entered the mission space without signing a team contract. In addition, the 5 of them displayed amazing talent in the game. The average strength of the 5 of them was even stronger than the 4 King Kongs, and Sun Xiaoxuan's initial ability was D rank. No one expected that the gentle and modest Sun Xiaoxuan's awakened ability would be so explosive and destructive. In the game, when her ability was activated, she could turn anything she touched into a bomb and throw it out. This was not the most abnormal part. What was even more abnormal was that this ability of hers had a crushing effect on low-level phantom beasts. When she faced an E-level phantom beast, not only was she not afraid of it, she could even turn it into a bomb and explode on the spot. With her ability, the 5-man team had once dealt with a group of E-grade phantasmal beasts that even a C-grade Protoss player would have to think twice before dealing with. Then, with Sun Xiaoxuan's explosive skills, they forcefully withstood the attack of the large wave of phantasmal beasts. The team had gained a lot, and now all of them were D rank. Lin Jingwei's ability was that of an elemental magician who could control the water element. After reaching D rank, he had grasped 2 spells. One of them was an advanced skill similar to Frost Shock, which could reduce the speed of an enemy and deal a small amount of damage. The other was his basic skill Moisturizing Rain, As the name suggested, this was a healer skill that healed and healed. In the beginning, Lin Jingwei rejected it. After all, his dream was to become a military advisor who could command the army and command the country with vigor. When he found out that he was actually a legendary water magician, he was a little disappointed, but it was not unacceptable. In fantasy novels, there were often powerful forbidden spells in water magic, such as 1,000 miles of ice or water dragon's roar. But he never thought that he would become a shameful battlefield healer. Bear 2's ability was the legendary beast transformation. When it used its ultimate move, the muscles on its entire body would swell, and it would become extremely powerful. It would be invulnerable to swords and spears, and it would also have a ferocious appearance. According to Xiong-er's ability, if he could reach S rank, he would have the chance to transform into a real Hellscream Grom. With a Bloodhowl battle axe, he would be able to cut down anyone he saw. As for Bai Fan, there was no need to mention him. This guy had actually awakened a talent for writing. He was really a vicious witch doctor on the battlefield, a walking source of negative buffs and viruses. Anyone who saw him would be annoyed. Elegance's ability was quite in line with her personality. The legendary Wounded Sword Demon was outstanding, because she could fight and carry. She only had one sword at the start, and her equipment depended on fighting. The more heavily injured she was, the stronger her attack and defense would be. If she could be stuck in a near-death state, the E-rank Elegance could even fight a C-rank Protoss player. Of course, if she was really a lone ranger, once she was in a near-death state, she would basically die. But she had a team, and there was a healer in the team, Lin Jingwei. The two of them were a perfect match. When their team of 5 fought against thousands of E-rank phantom beasts, they relied on Elegance to hold the fort in front. Xiong-er transformed into an orc warrior to help from the side. Bai Fan frantically wrote and poisoned books in the back. And Lin Jingwei leaned against the wall and madly used rain to nourish Elegance. Cough, cough. The most important task of killing was handed over to Sun Xiaoxuan. She first turned everything she could throw into bombs, and let Elegance and Xiong-er throw the dead or half-dead phantom beasts over. She wiped her hand on them, and after throwing them out, they were still bombs. After listening to the 5 of them talk about their experiences in the game, Chen Guang did not know what to say. He was speechless for a long time. Why did it feel like their lives were more thrilling and exciting than his? In addition, the speed of their growth was a little too fast. They actually adapted to the game so quickly and formed a super strong team with clear tactical thinking, clear division of labor, and seamless cooperation. Everyone's ability was brought into play. Even if they encountered a lone C-rank Protoss, there was no need to be afraid. Ordinary people really did not have this ability. I say, you guys suddenly got involved in this kind of thing. Why don't you know fear? Chen Guang could not help but ask. Sun Xiaoxuan leaned beside him and looked at him strangely. Why should we be afraid? It's not like we're the only players. There are so many players in the world. Lin Jingwei also said, Brother Guang, you haven't paid attention to a piece of news before, right? Chen Guang asked, what news? What happened in Area 51 is actually true. Area 51? The place where the aliens are locked up in America? Chen Guang thought for a while to make sure he did not hear wrong. In the old world, of course, he knew the legend of Area 51, but he was not sure if it existed in the New World. He did not know much about the New World before. Besides, wasn't China the strongest country in the New World? If there was a country in the world that could obtain and keep it, and even decipher the secrets of alien technology, wouldn't China be the most reliable? Lin Jingwei nodded. Yes, but the Area 51 that the people know is actually a cover. The specific location of the real alien technology base in the United States is even more secretive. A few years ago, we couldn't even confirm if it existed. It was only when one of our high-level spies was exposed last year that we received a definite answer at the last moment. Many people in China find it strange. With our nation's diligence and creativity, we only needed 30 to 40 years to lead the world in ancient times. But now that the new China has been established for nearly 90 years, we still haven't been able to leave Europe and America in the dust. This is very abnormal. Chen Guang raised his eyebrows. although he felt that what Lin Jingwei said made sense. As someone who knew the evolution of the old world, he had the urge to beat someone up. You make it sound so easy, you nationalistic egomaniac. But what does this have to do with the game? Actually, this is all my personal speculation. I think this matter is the same as the Tesla accident more than 100 years ago. It's really an accident when Area 51 was developing alien technology. Actually, with your authority, Brother Guang, you can also access the information. It's just that you might be too busy to read it. Before the game came, according to our monitoring, there was a violent earthquake in the Central Plains of the United States. The intensity exceeded 7.5. Almost at the same time, our country's researchers discovered the God particle. And then, the game came. And then, Chen Guang smacked his lips. He felt that little Lin's act of thinking that he had seen through everything. But in fact, it was all nonsense. It was very amusing. Lin Jingwei continued. So we have reason to believe that this should be the manifestation of another energy form in the universe. The appearance of players among humans should mean that we are forced to begin the next step of evolution, from a material life form to a spiritual life form. I also speculate that the reminder to reset when you die in the game should be erasing your memories as a player, but it's not a true death. Chen Guang immediately looked at him in a different light. Although this young man was making wild guesses, he actually managed to come up with a correct point of view in the end. He nodded. That's right. Lin Jingwei was overjoyed. Brother Guang, you think so too? You're an S-level player, so you should have more information than me, right? Chen Guang shook his head first, then nodded. It's not that I think so, but it's the truth. Resetting does not mean true death. But I'm not sure if a player can enter the game again after their identity is taken away. I still have to think about this. That's right, then why should we be afraid? You're looking down on us too much. Gaoya, who was beside them, still had a bad temper and spoke rudely. Ahem, Gaoya, don't be like this. Chen Guang doesn't mean any harm. Sun Xiaoxuan tried to persuade her. Gaoya rolled her eyes and didn't say anything else. In her mind, she was cursing Sun Xiaoxuan for not giving up on Chen Guang. They then asked Chen Guang about his experience in the game. After all, he was the legendary S-level player. If they could know his growth, it would be very helpful. But the truth was that Chen Guang didn't have any experience. Even with the slaughtering world, he didn't get any substantial improvement. However, the background setting of the new world had set a tone for him. He had a closed-door training that didn't exist. Left with no choice, Chen Guang could only lie. When I fell off the cliff, I thought I was going to die. I didn't expect to see a crystal skeleton at the bottom of the cliff. Crystal skeleton. That's right. The energy in a powerhouse's body is too pure, so their bones crystallize. After they die, they become crystal skeletons. Then, I benefited from the inheritance left by this powerhouse and leveled up from sea level to B level. Then, I entered an endless sea, and I was sucked into a whirlpool in the depths of the sea. Therefore, you wouldn't know if you didn't try. Chen Guang's bragging had fooled the five of them. Only then did he realize how good he was at bragging. They really believed him. The six of them chatted in school for the whole day. They looked forward to the future and summarized their experiences. However, Chen Guang didn't consider forming a team with them. The situation was complicated. Chen Guang didn't have any reward points. With their inventory, they could only exchange for 3 team contracts at most. If Chen Guang formed a team with 2 of them, the other 3's original team system would be broken. The next time they entered the game space, they would be alone. In that case, they might as well not form a team at all. In the afternoon, Chen Guang left Gokyo University and went straight to the city. Along the way, his mind was a mess. It was really strange. Most of the people who were close to him had mysteriously become players, and they even mysteriously had a party bug. Compared to other players, this was simply breaking the balance. But what was even stranger was that none of his family members who were close to him had any reaction. What was the cause of this? When he saw Wu Tong, the thought in his mind became even stranger. That's right. Sister Wu Tong and Sister Tang Ying had become a team. Chen Guang looked down at his hands. Am I the legendary source of the influenza virus? Isn't my influence too strong? Everyone close to me has entered the game? That's right. The player rate of Tianguang Group is also ridiculously high. Maybe this is the reason. Chapter 1237. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. This new discovery made him uneasy, and in Wu Tong's eyes, he seemed a little distracted. At this time, the two of them were in Wu Tong's office. Wu Tong had been in the position of director for some time now. The longer she was away from frontline posts, the stronger her official aura became. Whether she was willing or not, this was a fact that could not be changed. Perhaps, only when she was alone with Chen Guang could she find a little of the past. Wu Tong straightened her uniform, propped her chin with her hand, and lay her whole body on the desk. She did not rush Chen Guang, but just looked at him happily in a daze. Chen Guang's heart was completely lost, and he was completely immersed in his own world. First of all, although everyone was considered a genius, their performance in the game was a little too strong. Compared to the difficult start of the ordinary players, their start was simply too smooth. They had a team effect, and their initial ability values were relatively high. Not only did they exist in the form of a team, but the distribution of their awakened abilities was also quite scientific and reasonable. This definitely had something to do with his influence. There was only one explanation. In the old world, these people were too closely connected to him, and their fate formed a mysterious connection with him. When the worlds merged and the new world descended, the strong connection between them and himself allowed them to form a complete team with each other. They were more likely to become players. And because of the strong connection between them in real life, they would form a team effect. This was obviously very unfair to other players. But when he thought about it again, compared to the Protoss players who formed teams and organizations from the beginning, this seemed quite reasonable. After all, there was no harm if there was no comparison. The Protoss players were even more abnormal. Here was the problem. Once Chen Guang realized that he was the legendary source of infection, he had two choices in front of him. He could either find ways to continue spreading his influence, so that more ordinary people would be influenced by him and become players, and further strengthen the human players in the game. Or he could try his best to restrain his influence in the future to prevent more ordinary people from being involved in this matter, which he did not know whether it was good or bad. Both choices had their own reasons, and Chen Guang didn't know what to do. If he wanted to strengthen the strength of the humans in the game, he should spread his influence and influence more powerful players. However, those who could truly survive in the game and grow rapidly were the cream of the crop. Allowing more ordinary people to enter the game might not necessarily be a good thing for them. If they were to be sent to their deaths at the beginning, it might even be disadvantageous. What should he do then? In addition, Chen Guang was also considering whether to let the 5-man team from Tianguang Group and Gokyo University merge into the Ministry of Heaven. But now he changed his mind. If they were to rashly pull these people into the Heaven Division's team, it might destroy their originally stable team system. After thinking about it, he decided to take a risk and temporarily let everyone stay outside of Heaven Division, allowing them to develop freely. Of course, he could also use his authority to give them some extra convenience. He could give them a random name and open up the Heaven Division's intelligence and reinforcement system to them. This way, everyone would be able to enjoy the Tian Division's resources without any obvious changes to their identities. However, Chen Guang still had to convince the masses. So if they were to enjoy the Tian Division's resources, they would naturally have to make appropriate contributions. For example, if there was a member of Heaven Division who needed help in the game, they would have to lend a helping hand if the conditions allowed. Other than that, if they met a relatively weaker member of Heaven Division in the game, they should also consider adding them into the temporary team to help them grow. However, they might not be willing. In the game, everyone had their own judgment, and Chen Guang couldn't even be sure if his decision was really suitable for them. Perhaps they would think that developing alone was more beneficial? If Chen Guang had really grown from C to S rank, Then he might have 100% confidence in his judgment. But now, even he wasn't sure if he was right or wrong. Would it really be better to let them develop freely? Look at your melancholy face. Those who don't know would think that you owe someone tens of billions of dollars. Wu Tong, who was beside him, finally spoke. She patted him on the shoulder. What are you worried about? Chen Guang sighed and turned to look at her. He asked, Sister Wu Tong, you said that you and Sister Tang Ying bumped into each other in the game. What exactly happened? Wu Tong chuckled. Come to think of it, it was strange. At that time, both my and Shadow Lady's appearances changed completely, but our figures didn't change much. We were big when we should be big, and small when we should be small. As Wu Tong spoke, she deliberately puffed out her chest. Chen Guang coughed lightly. Ahem, let's get down to business. All right. Actually, the two of us didn't recognize each other at first, but we didn't know each other. Not long after we escaped together, I felt that the other party's gaze and tone of voice were quite right. So when we were alone, I revealed my identity first. As soon as I opened my mouth, she immediately admitted it. Chen Guang couldn't help but admire Wu Tong's decisiveness. However, it was also in line with her personality. She was always so unreasonable. To put it bluntly, she was lacking a brain. I thought that you would become more sophisticated after being in the government for a long time. But you're still so straightforward. Are you complimenting me or scolding me? It's true that I have to be more mature in life. But in that game, no one knows that I'm Chief Wu. Why do I have to hide it and wear a mask all the time? Won't I die of exhaustion? You see, many people on the internet are full of tricks when it comes to scolding others. Don't you think he's the same in real life? Just a while ago, the netizen who insulted the police was personally arrested by my subordinates. Who would have thought that the brat would shout louder than anyone on the internet all day long? In the end, he turned out to be a frustrated white-collar worker. Everyone in his company said that he was honest. You can't judge a book by its cover. Chen Guang didn't expect Wu Tong to divert the topic. When it came to her anecdotes about her work, he pulled the topic back. By the way, what's your and Sister Tang Ying's ability? Speaking of which, it's strange. My and Sister Tang Ying's ability. Wu Tong seemed to want to say something but stopped. Chen Guang was at a loss. What's wrong? Is it inconvenient for you to tell me? Wu Tong's face suddenly turned red, as if she had made up her mind. Forget it. I can't hide it from you. But you have to promise me that you won't tell anyone else. What are you talking about? It's like it's some big deal. When Wu Tong finished speaking, Chen Guang's mouth was wide open for a long time. Wu Tong and Tang Ying's awakened abilities left him speechless. Before the two of us met each other, it was really frustrating. I couldn't fight at all. I even had a D rank rating, but I couldn't use it at all. The description of my ability was also vague. I wanted to try triggering the player's innate ability like others, but nothing happened. There was even one time when I was chased by an E-rank player and almost died in his hands. Chen Guang was surprised. No way. Do human players kill each other? Wu Tong curled her lips and looked at Chen Guang in surprise. Looks like I have to get to know you again. Why didn't I realize that you were so stupid and naive? Weren't you a bad kid? Why did you think that human players would really be a loving family? Chen Guang chuckled. I thought that with a common enemy like the Protoss, humans would be able to put down their grudges and work together. You think too much. There are so many players, and no one wants to be the one who gets eliminated. Even if it's just 1 point, they have to fight for it. Not to mention that everyone has a different identity in the game. As long as they can vent their negative emotions, who can be detached from the world? There's a little demon living in everyone's heart. I know that, but I didn't expect. Forget it. Let's get back to you and Sister Tang Ying's ability. Chen Guang smiled bitterly and shook his head. It wasn't that he was naive, but he vaguely knew the truth of this game. In addition to self-defense, the most important task for players in the game was not to complete the quest, defeat the phantom beasts, and pass the test. The real theme should be to suppress the Protoss in the quest. Now that the Protoss were much stronger than humans, if humans did not work together, they would not be able to make a comeback. However, The current situation was that Chen Guang understood this logic, but others did not know that they were facing a game. Therefore, other than the heavens, who had a strong sense of social responsibility, there should be quite a number of people who treated this matter as a game. At that time, I hated that guy to the core, but there was nothing I could do. He had a high level but no combat power. Later, after I escaped and returned to the main group, I talked to the shadow girl and found out that she had the same problem. Then, when the two of us faced each other, I realized that our abilities had to be combined to be effective. There's such a setting? Yin and Yang balance. Screw you, both of them are yin, there's no yang. Wu Tong pushed Chen Guang, but then changed the topic. But then again, it seems that your understanding is correct. Have you heard of humanoid weapons? I've seen them in cartoons before, ship girl. You can think of it that way. Anyway, my ability is called Activator, and your sister Tang Ying's is called Mutant. What is a mutant? After the Activator activates their superpowers, their entire body will recombine and mutate into a weapon. Weapon? Right now it's a broadsword about 3 feet long. If we rank it according to the player's ability, it's probably a weapon with destructive power between D and C grade. What about you? My mission is to use this broadsword that the Shadow Girl has transformed into to slay demons. There's such a thing. Then this is called fusion. It's not wrong to call it fusion. Anyway, when I wield the Crimson Shadow Sword, I'm very strong. We once fought with a C-grade Protoss player, and I beat him until he ran away. Chen Guang asked again. Oh right, how do you activate your ability to turn a person into a sword? Wu Tong smiled mysteriously, stretched out her right hand, and pointed her middle finger upward. Chen Guang did not understand. What kind of move is this? Do you really need me to explain it so clearly? I used my finger to make your sister Tang Ying do something, and then she lost consciousness and mutated. Chen Guang's mouth was wide open, and he was speechless for a long time. He was really shocked. Wu Tong blushed at his stare. We've thought about it before, but we've always been shy and didn't dare to try it. We don't have any other choice. We can't always be useless in the game. That's the theory, but this setting is too. Why, you don't like it? Are you unhappy? Is it because of her or me? Chen Guang waved his hands. No. So you don't care about me? Sister Wu Tong, look at the situation now. You're a bureau chief after all, so you should have some sense of propriety. Both of you are only D grade, but you can already fight against a C grade Protoss. This is the pinnacle of combat power among human players. Although it's a little wild, for the sake of strength, it's understandable. Yep, that's it. I feel like you're laughing. Are you planning something bad in your head? Absolutely not. Is that so? That's a pity. Actually, I've discussed it with the Shadow Lady. If there's a chance, I'll let you try in the game to see if you can stimulate her. For the future of mankind, to defeat the evil Protoss, even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance of strengthening mankind, I'll do it. You're still saying you don't have any bad ideas? Actually it's not impossible. Men are all like this. You can hide this from others, but you can't hide it from me, who deals with criminals all year round. Sooner or later, I'll bring you to justice. Wu Tong patted Chen Guang's shoulder. Oh right, what were you worried about just now? Chen Guang casually said his guess. You're saying that 2 groups of people have formed a party, because of you without signing the party contract? Yep. What's wrong? I was wondering why I appeared in the same game as the Shadow Lady. Moreover, our birthplaces are very close to each other. I thought it was a coincidence, but now it seems like it was inevitable. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have exchanged for those 2 party contracts. They're so expensive. Then what do you think I should do? Should I let you join the Heaven Division? Should I continue to think of ways to infect more players? It's hard for me to explain to you the specifics, but this game has indeed been greatly influenced by me. I'll help you think about the first problem. It's very simple. Just give the suggestion, and let them decide for themselves. Just like me, I'm not interested in joining the Heaven Division. Chen Guang was puzzled. Why is that? I've been in the system for so long. It wasn't easy for me to regain a free identity. I don't have to think about work all the time. In the end, I had to switch from the police system to the special forces system. Isn't that torture for me? But isn't your dream? Life in the game should be different from life in real life, right? It's not that I'm tired of my job. Arresting criminals is addictive. I'll never tire of it. Do you know? In the past 6 months, the crime rate in my district has decreased by 1%. Chen Guang felt that Wu Tong's thoughts were contradictory, but he didn't know how to convince her. On second thought, it didn't seem necessary. Since she took the initiative to say it, she must have made up her mind. She should have known about the existence of the Heaven Division, but she chose to act independently. Didn't that mean she didn't want to join the Heaven Division? Alright. By the way, why can't I get through to Sister Tang Ying? She just came back and is busy. Didn't you give her a large sum of money? She's busy with her research institute. I thought she's no longer interested. How is that possible? God knows how interested she is now. Other than researching your genes, she found herself a new business. What business? She wants to decipher the connection between the game and the human psyche. She even thinks that the player's genes have been changed. Chen Guang was silent. In a sense, Tang Ying's guess wasn't wrong. However, it wasn't just the players that were changed. It was the entire universe. The level of change wasn't as simple as genes, but the fundamental particles and the rules of the universe. Chapter 1238. Alright, I'll go look for her later. Save it. She said that she's only focused on getting the research institute up and running as soon as possible. She doesn't care about the outside world and only cares about the lab. Instead of looking for her, why don't you give her more money and invest in her research? You're not short of money anyway. Oh, by the way, she knew that you'd come to me to ask her, so she told me to send a sample to me when you're free. But you don't have to go. As she spoke, Wu Tong forwarded a message to Chen Guang that contained Tang Ying's message to him. Brat, the sample is running out. Hurry up. Tang Ying, am busy sending money. Chen Guang stared at the phone in a daze. Did Tang Ying's personality change after the world fusion? Also, what's with the sample? Does it mean that I have to make it myself and send it to her in a bottle? Will the delivery company accept it? If I were the delivery company, I'd probably call the police to arrest the pervert. By the way, if you really want to do something with her, why don't you come to our mission space when there's a mission in the game? S-class players can choose their own mission space, right? Chen Guang shook his head. I'm not sure. Then we'll talk about it later. There's no point in being impatient. Alright, you can leave now if there's nothing else. Huh, you're sending me off already? Of course not. I've been here for too long. There's a regional conference waiting for me. Recently, some players seem to be lost in the power they've suddenly gained. They don't seem to be very peaceful outside. The security management is quite stressful. After that, Wu Tong really turned around and left. But after taking 2 steps, she turned around and looked at Chen Guang in annoyance. Let me add something else. Tang Ying has already confessed to me about what you and Sister Tang Ying did on the plane. Chen Guang was stunned. His body stiffened as he did not know how to deal with the situation. He had the awkwardness of being a cat that was caught stealing fish. Fortunately, Wu Tong immediately said, Come on, we are not ordinary people now. There are some things that we don't need to care so much. Relax. I've also heard some news that you accidentally encountered some dual cultivation technique when you were practicing martial arts. I understand. It's just that I'm a little unwilling to let you have it for free. After that, Wu Tongjin left, leaving Chen Guang at a loss in the office. Was she angry or not? Also, I was asked to leave so early today. Is it because Sister Wu Tong is angry? Or was she really busy? He didn't understand the problem until he arrived at the Dawn Photocatalyst Research Institute, which had just been completed. However, he didn't have the right to dwell on the same thing. As the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. Although he didn't feel the overwhelming pressure, he had already shouldered a very heavy burden. Now he was also afraid of the next game mission. It seemed that the advanced team led by Yu Ting had completed their mission perfectly. allowing the gods of the endless realm of the gods to be projected into the game on a large scale. The endless realm of the gods would never spend so much effort on useless things. The gods didn't just passively descend because of the fusion of the worlds. According to Yu Ting's previous performance, they came with a mission. Although he didn't know what their mission was, he certainly couldn't let them succeed. As early as when Chen Guang won the lawsuit with the 5 god-level formulas in Princeton, the Dawn Laboratory project was officially launched. The site selection, the purchase of the company's old factory, and the initial purchase of equipment and instruments were carried out almost simultaneously with the transformation of Zhuo Jingxi's results in Princeton's laboratory. Now more than 90% of the civil construction of the Dawn Laboratory had been completed. Only some simple decoration work was left. As for the equipment, it couldn't be bought in a short time. First, it was expensive. Although Chen Guang's previous investment seemed to be expensive, it was still a long way from building a mature, top-notch photocatalyst laboratory. Second, a lot of the equipment had to be customized. It would take some time from the order to the production. Now that the global box office dividends of Women were gradually coming in, the $360 million reward from the dark web was also gradually being exchanged. After a while, Chen Guang would easily be able to spend hundreds of millions of USD in one go. At that time, Dawn Laboratory would become the world's top photocatalyst research institution, both hard and soft power. Of course, the most important thing now was to use the 5 kinds of photocatalysts that Zhuo Jingxi had mass-produced in Princeton's laboratory as soon as possible in the Tangshan Industrial Factory. First, it would solve the remaining problems of the Tangshan Industrial Factory once and for all. Second, it would officially announce the birth of Dawn Environmental Protection Group. Third, it would use industrial application to prove to the world that their photocatalyst formula was not just on paper, but it really had practical value. No matter how perfect the formulas on paper were, or how perfect the theoretical conditions were, there was an irrefutable truth in the global scientific research industry. True knowledge could only be tested by practice. Before meeting Zhuo Jingxi, Chen Guang was already mentally prepared that Zhuo Jingxi might have become a player. Sure enough, as soon as he arrived at the laboratory, Hualing quickly closed the door, then turned around and looked at Chen Guang mysteriously. I finally see an S-level god in the flesh. He's just a little more handsome than the average person. Chen Guang was a little confused by her stare, then turned his head to look in the direction of Zhongyu and Zhuo Jingxi. Don't tell me the 3 of you have also become players? Hualing shrugged. What do you think? Otherwise, why would I say that in front of them? Having been shocked 3 times before, Chen Guang was now numb to it. Anyway, people who were quite close to him and often interacted with him were most likely people. Hey, if I'm not wrong, the 3 of you also have your own team in the game, right? Zhuo Jingxi, who was next to him, put down the test tube in her hand and looked at Chen Guang in surprise. How did you know? Sure enough, Chen Guang chuckled. If I said it was because of me, would you believe me? Zhuo Jingxi pondered for 2 seconds and said, Oh, I get it. Is it because your level is too high that people like us, who are often with you, are infected by your power? Then not only do we become players, but we can also naturally team up in the game? You can understand it that way. Anyway, that's the case. After chatting with the 3 of them for a while, Chen Guang gained a better understanding of their abilities before shifting his attention back to the photocatalyst. The game was scary, but life had to go on. In addition, the abilities of the 3 of them were also very strange. They had been through 4 mission spaces so far, but they had not encountered the slightest bit of danger. Every time they entered the game space, as long as the 3 of them exposed their abilities, not to mention other human players, even the Protoss would protect them. In reality, their work was scientific research, especially Zhuo Jingxi, who was proficient in environmental science, material science, chemistry, and physics. In the game, her ability was further strengthened. She could actually help others repair damaged equipment and items, and at the same time, she could modify equipment and make low-level items more powerful. As for Hualing, she was more hands-on. Every time she modified or repaired equipment, It was often Zhuo Jingxi who used her ability to come up with a set of plans, and then Hualing could complete it at a very fast speed. Of course, this process required the consumption of materials, and these materials had to be exchanged by others with reward points. Zhong Yu's main ability was to pre-process these materials. Moreover, she was good at environmental protection. She also had a special ability. For example, when she encountered a powerful fire-type magical beast, this kind of magical beast would often set up a scorching sea of fire or magma around it to facilitate its own combat. It could weaken the strength of the players, and also allow itself to be like a fish in water. Zhong Yu could use her awakened talent to eliminate the impact of the phantom beast on the environment as much as possible. The team formed by the three of them did not pose any threat or lethality to others, but it was quite useful. It was simply a super logistics team that everyone loved. Chen Guang thought of the combat uniform he had seen when he experienced the slaughtering world, the various magical equipment that the genius high school student had transformed into, and the apocalypse tank and sniper of the old man's team. He thought to himself that if Zhuo Jingxi's team had been among the crowd at that time, the ordinary players would not have been so weak. Chapter 1239. He stayed in the laboratory for about an afternoon, and saw with his own eyes the 5 photocatalysts he had invented himself. These 5 finished products were now stored in dozens of safes in the underground warehouse of the Research Institute. There were also extremely high-level security guards patrolling outside to prevent them from being stolen. On the other side, the metal carriers for the 5 finished catalysts were also being produced in full swing. The 5 pretreatment pools of Tongshan factory had long been built, and they were just waiting for the carriers coated with the new catalysts to be thrown into the pools. As for Zhuo Jingxi and the others, their current work included continuing to supervise the production of the customized equipment, perfecting and accepting the technical improvements of Tongshan factory, and perfecting and verifying the actual treatment effect of the new photocatalyst formula on the 5 kinds of ultra-difficult wastewater in the laboratory. Although everyone already knew the results, the popularization of every new process and new product often had to go through several processes: theoretical perfection, small-scale research, pilot verification, and industrial application verification. This wasn't superfluous, but a very rigorous scientific process. Chen Guang didn't understand this before, and he didn't care about it. These were all formulas he had used as a cheat. Although he was 100% sure of the effect, others might not think so. First, he would do a verification in the laboratory. This was the first time he had done it for others to see, and then he would do it again on the spot. There was no doubt about the conclusion. When he left, he wanted to ask Teacher Zhuo out for a heart-to-heart talk in the evening, but she gave up on the idea on the spot. She said that she wouldn't leave until there were results in the laboratory. Now that the newly established Dawn Research Institute had recruited a lot of new employees, she didn't trust them. The Dawn Research Institute had hired quite professional security guards, and many of them had been borrowed from the military through their connections with the Chinese Academy of Sciences. At the very least, they were all professional Special Forces soldiers. In fact, these Special Forces soldiers also faced a situation where they could choose not to transfer. Their years of service had long exceeded the normal length of military service. According to the law, they could already choose to receive a large sum of money to return to ordinary life. However, these elites usually chose to continue serving because of the needs of the country and their personal patriotism. With their individual combat ability, it was easy for them to be promoted to the rank of sergeant, but there were all kinds of difficulties if they wanted to go further. They really weren't willing to be responsible for security for a private company. They couldn't afford to lose face. This time, the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the higher-ups of the military had both made an appearance. It was said that they were responsible for the security of Chen Guang's core industries. At the same time, although they had changed positions, they were still paid. They really managed to pull in a lot of experts from the military. With the capabilities of these people, Chen Guang felt that this side was quite reliable, and there was no need to worry at all. Unfortunately, Zhuo Jingxi did not think so, so he could only run away with his tail between his legs. After busying himself outside for 2 whole days, it was rare for him to return to his house in the district outside Wujing University. Although he had become a millionaire, as the saying goes, no gold or silver nest can compare to your own kennel. It didn't matter if the house wasn't big, as long as it was comfortable. That was why he was so angry when his parents blew up the villa that Lilai's parents had painstakingly built. His anger reached its peak when he returned and saw that the room that was meant for him was gone. Now that he was alone in a room, he felt a little lonely. He thought that he might as well go back to school to stay. Otherwise, it would be too miserable to stay here alone. There wasn't even someone to brag to. In any case, school was about to start soon. In any case, he could wash his hands of all the company's matters. In any case, there was no difference whether he cared about the players' matters or not. When the next cup realm came, he could pull himself into the game. Wouldn't everything be clear then? S-rank player? As he crossed his legs and fiddled with the computer in front of him, Chen Guang pondered over this explanation. Although others often used this to describe him, he actually didn't know how the so-called S-rank was classified. No one would believe him if he said it. As his mind wandered, he casually fiddled with the mouse on the computer, looking around. He was still far from knowing the information related to the entire world's environment. Things that seemed like common sense in the eyes of others were the accumulated knowledge of many people over a decade or two. It might seem simple, but it was definitely not something that could be done in 3 days to memorize everything and not conflict with the old world's common sense system in his mind when communicating with others. For example, China's current GDP was nearly twice that of the United States. This completely conflicted with the impression in Chen Guang's mind. It was so conflicting that he almost couldn't change it. Therefore, when Chen Guang chatted with others, he was actually very careful, afraid that he would slip up and make things awkward. After browsing the news for a while, he felt a little annoyed. Watching the news with a purpose was completely different from taking out his phone to browse when he had nothing to do. He clicked on the entertainment news to change his train of thought and rest his brain. He happened to see Jin Shiyue and Jiang Ye's names on the headlines. Women swept the global box office. Of course, Chen Guang wasn't the only one who became popular. The other main leads in the film, Ren Chong, Zhou Ye, Zhao Yueling, and the others, had their salaries and net worth soar. In just 3 to 4 months, they had at least received several high-paying contracts. As for Jin Shiyue and Jiang Ye, who were already extremely popular, there was no need to mention them. No matter how powerful Chinese entertainment was in the New World, the natural barrier between Chinese and English in the entertainment culture was inevitable. Although Hollywood in the New World wasn't as powerful as in the Old World, it at least occupied half of the world's market with Chinese films. Furthermore, most of the time, the two sides didn't overlap. After this battle, the left and right-hand duo could be considered to have completely broken through the barrier between the two major language families and made a name for themselves in the English-speaking area. Although the two of them performed rather mediocre in scenes without Chen Guang, as long as Chen Guang appeared or filmed scenes with others on set, it would definitely be worth the price of the ticket. As for the news that Chen Guang saw now, it was that the two of them planned to follow up on their victory and release an all-English album. Although the two of them had been child stars since they were young and could only be said to be at the level of an ordinary person in cultural classes, they benefited from the fact that they had gone abroad early to further their studies at the Tchaikovsky Academy of Music and other prestigious academies, so their spoken English was pretty good. In the past half a year, because of Chen Guang's participation in the world language competition, Jiang Ye and Jin Shiyue, who had evil intentions, took the initiative to cram in their spoken English. Now was the time to record an all-English album, so that people wouldn't feel like they were salt and pepper when they sang it. Looking at Jiang Ye's beautiful photos in the news, Chen Guang's mind couldn't help but think of some inappropriate scenes. He turned on his phone, but it was a pity that he didn't know when his previous inventory had been emptied. It was quite a pity. Chen Guang decided to find a sufficient reason for himself. That's right. in order to provide samples for the Great Life Sciences Research Institute. I can't be so selfish. I should take the initiative to sacrifice and contribute. Also, seeing that the two of them are still in the mood to think about the new album, it seems that they aren't sure if the two of them have become players. Now that I've come out of seclusion, it's reasonable for me to take the initiative to care about them. Therefore, he picked up his phone and decisively called Jiang Yage. Chapter 1240. In fact, it was already quite late at night, and it was quite impolite to call others. However, Chen Guang was a little bit brainless, and the other party was Jiang Yage, so he had less scruples. He didn't expect Jiang Yage to hang up on him first. While Chen Guang was confused, Jiang Yage directly opened his WeChat video call. After the video connection, what appeared in front of Chen Guang's eyes was a magnificently decorated hall. He didn't know which luxurious hotel room Jiang Yage was in at the moment. Celebrities were often like this. They couldn't go back to their homes all year round, and most of their lives were spent in hotels or flying around on planes. Although Jin Jiang and Qin Haodong were now superstars with extraordinary backgrounds, to be celebrities, these things had to be done eventually. Otherwise, the audience and fans would often forget them in the fastest speed. After waiting for a few seconds, Jiang Yage appeared in the camera. At this time, she was sitting in front of a piano in pajamas. Her fingers danced nimbly on the keys, and the beautiful notes fluttered through the video signal, adding to her charm at this time. "You're finally willing to call me. I thought you'd forgotten about us." Jiang Yage stopped, turned sideways, and turned to look at the camera. She said very mischievously, being looked at by her rather pure gaze. Chen Guang suddenly felt a little ashamed in his heart. He was completely embarrassed to expose his previous crooked thoughts, so he coughed lightly and said, "It's nothing special. I just saw that you're about to release a new album, so I called to show my concern." Jiang Yage chuckled, and looked as if she had already seen through him. "Hee, I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? How could I not know you?" In fact, she was very happy at this moment. She had known this guy for so long, and she had always been the one to take the initiative. This guy had always been stubborn. Sometimes, even if his mind was full of distracting thoughts, he would still hide them in front of her. He was quite wretched and shameless. Today, he took the initiative to call her in the middle of the night. How could he not be dirty? "Oh right, have you seen my new variety show?" Chen Guang didn't know what was on Jiang Yage's mind at this time. He changed the topic to Haishin with only one purpose, to test her. Jiang Yage rolled her eyes, feeling a little disappointed. However, she immediately collected her thoughts and put on a serious expression. "You want to ask me if I'm a player, right? Well, I already know the answer." As soon as she opened her mouth, Chen Guang knew whether or not it was true. The two of them chatted for a while, and as expected, what was the saying again? When the nest is overturned, no eggs can remain intact. Their relationship with Chen Guang was extremely deep, and they were also deeply implicated by this fellow. Coupled with the fact that Jin Jiang and Jin Jin were extremely talented, it was simply inevitable that they would be dragged into this mess. These two people's abilities were also quite impressive. They were called soul singers, which sounded like a curse, but actually had a deeper meaning. The effect of the so-called soul singers was similar to that of the warsong shaman. In the game, they could use their voices to buff their enemies or buff their teammates. This seemed a little similar to playing the piano, but in fact it was not. The talent level of the soul singers was obviously a level higher than that of the pianist. At the same level, the weakening and buff effects of the soul singers were much stronger than that of the pianist. More importantly, they didn't need any equipment. They only needed to use their voices, and they could sing whenever they felt that something was wrong. They could sing to the point where one Buddha was born, and two Buddhas ascended to heaven at any time. However, Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage were very dissatisfied with this. In their hearts, music was something that could bring joy to people. How could they sing to the point where others would run away like rats? Moreover, their singing was not bad. So wouldn't it be embarrassing? Fortunately, apart from the initial talent of being a soul singer, the two of them each had a second talent. Unlike Jiang Yage, who only focused on strengthening her piano skills after meeting Chen Guang, Jin Shiyue had been a genius when it came to musical instruments since a young age. In addition, she was diligent and inquisitive. Whenever she had the chance, she would practice hard. In fact, her piano skills were definitely at the level of a master. However, due to her status as a celebrity and her young age, she had never held any special concerts. The impression that others had of her was that of a celebrity with both acting and singing skills. She had never been regarded as a master pianist. It was only in the game that her talent was recognized by the system, which had seen through its essence. A soul singer with a single skill was already very powerful. Now that she could combine playing and singing, her power increased to a whole new level. Although she was only a D rank now, she could already be considered a C rank powerful support. As for Jiang Yage's second talent, it was even more strange. It was actually car racing. Chen Guang guessed that it might have something to do with her chasing him in a car on Fengquan Mountain. In short, the two of them really formed the strange combination that Chen Guang had once imagined, the legendary caravan soul singer girls group. Others could not catch up to them, and they could not hit them. Jiang Yage drove the caravan that she had exchanged her reward points while shouting from the driver's seat. She was responsible for the super negative buff. Jin Shiyue was responsible for playing the piano in the caravan, adding buffs to her own people. That was not all. Although the two of them had changed their appearances in the game, others did not know that they were a left-hand and right-hand duo. However, it still could not stop their celebrity temperament, and it even strengthened them to a considerable extent. Every time the two of them entered the mission space, they were able to quickly form teams, big or small. So far, in the 5 missions they had experienced, almost every time the teams formed by the two of them could become the mainstay of the humans in each independent space. Chen Guang even felt that the two of them might enjoy the fun of the game more than him. I'm convinced. That's good. Then I don't have to worry about you so much. Chen Guang laughed, and then prepared to forcibly cut off the video. Hey, wait. What's the matter? In order to cover up his evil intentions, Chen Guang deliberately pinched a very stern expression. When can you come to Yanjing? In a few days, Sister Shiyue and I will go to Europe. Since we are going to release an English album, we have to properly promote it. Now that you are our boss, shouldn't you come and support us? We will make money for you in the future, Jiang Yage said while blinking, which was very meaningful. Only then did Chen Guang realize that he had nearly forgotten that the two of them were artists under him. He thought about it and said, Is that so? I think it's better for you to go out after a while. You can come to Wujing first. Are you serious? What's the matter? Jiang Yage tilted her head and looked at him. Chen Guang nodded. That's my plan. It seems that a lot of people have been involved because of me. I think I should call everyone together and communicate with each other. At this point, he didn't care about the accident or the shirabe anymore. The whole world was different now. Everyone's fate had changed. If the accident happened, then so be it. As long as he could gather everyone together into a team, and with the support of heaven's resources, Chen Guang felt that he might be able to build a team that could rival Yu Ting's team before the next game mission. No matter how strong he was still just one person. He couldn't take care of everything. There would always be things that he couldn't take care of. I will first make myself the strongest player, then build the strongest team. Only then can I truly boost my confidence. I have to let all the players know that not only am I strong, I can also make others strong. Just as he was thinking about this, his phone suddenly rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a message from Tang Ying. Where's the sample? Tang Ying was rushing the goods again. Can we not be arrogant? Can you come and get it yourself? Chen Guang replied decisively. Chapter 1241. In the end, he still found a high-end courier company to mail the small glass bottle the next morning. In order to prevent the smell from leaking, not only did he seal the bottle tightly, but he even wrapped it with at least 3 layers of adhesive tape. At first, the courier refused. After all, the other party's behavior was too sneaky, and he didn't even let him open the box to check. He said that it was a normal nutritional protein for a girl to use on a facial mask. But who are you kidding? Who would send a facial mask with such a tight package? Who would send a facial mask in such a small bottle? The courier had reason to believe that the thing that the other party was trying to mail might be poisonous. And he even wanted to call the police. Sir, do you think this is appropriate? You're dressed so sneakily, and you want to mail such a strange thing. I asked you what it was, but you didn't tell me. Shouldn't you at least let me see what's in the bottle? But you don't agree. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you want to express. I can't accept your order. I really can't accept it. Why don't you find someone else? The courier waved his hand, turned around, and wanted to leave. He even put his hand in his pocket, planning to call the police once he was far away. Chen Guang was placed in an awkward position. Actually, he could have asked someone from his company to help him, but he was afraid that if someone saw it, it would be embarrassing. Besides, even if someone didn't see it, it would be too disgusting to let someone he knew deliver this to him. He had thought that he would be rejected if he called the courier, but he didn't expect the man to look like he wanted to call the police. Left with no choice, he took off the sunglasses, hat, and mask on his face. All right, you should know who I am now, right? The courier was stunned for a few seconds before he suddenly reacted. Oh my God, you are. He gulped before continuing. All-rounder? Chen Guang? Chen Guang, the star of women? Chen Guang nodded. Aha, can you help me deliver it now? Well, although I didn't expect to see you here, our company has a rule that you have to look at something. Chen Guang took out a stack of red notes from his pocket. I understand your company's requirements, but I really have some inconveniences. How about this? Since it's a same city express delivery, why don't you help me deliver it privately? That won't do. If the company finds out, I'll... Chen Guang took out another stack. There's about 3,000 or 4,000 here. As long as you don't tell anyone, who will know? Anyway, if someone asks, you can just say that you didn't accept my order, right? The red notes that Chen Guang had taken out added up to nearly 6,000 yuan. The purchasing power of the New World's RMB was greater than that of the Old World. 5,000 to 6,000 yuan was equivalent to 2 to 3 months of this young man's salary. In the end, the young man succumbed to the temptation of money and accepted the small bottle and the stack of red notes that Chen Guang had wrapped tightly. Chen Guang wasn't afraid that he wouldn't do anything after taking the money. He was famous, rich, and powerful. The young man knew that if he dared to cause trouble, Chen Guang had 10,000 ways to make him disappear. After sending off the young man, Chen Guang returned to his room and took out his phone. He began to think about how to call everyone to his place for the meeting. Before he could make the call, he received a call from an unknown number. Chen Guang answered the call with confusion. He heard a vaguely familiar voice. It was Wang Long, whom Chen Guang hadn't talked to in a long time. He was Wu Tong's deputy when she was the captain of the Wenxing town branch. Now, after Wu Tong was promoted, Wang Long followed suit and became the captain of the Xinhua district branch. Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to call you at this time. Chen Guang didn't think much of it. Instead, he had a bad feeling. Given his simple friendship with Wang Long would only contact him if he had something important to tell him. What's the matter? Well, the bureau is in some trouble and may need your help, Mr. Chen. Wang Long said hesitantly. Where is it? Tell me, I'll be there right away. He didn't know what happened, but since Wang Long was asking for help, it might really be something serious. It's at Xinhua Industrial Park, East Gate, number 32, Zone D. The director didn't want me to contact you, but I think the problem is serious, so I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, I'll be there right away. Chen Guang went downstairs and drove to the Xinhua Industrial Park as fast as he could. He drove in a hurry, and while waiting for the traffic lights, he searched for information online. The place was a large industrial park outside the inner Third Ring Road in Wu Tong's district. There were many factories of large enterprises. Several of the top logistics companies in China and the world had built their large warehouse centers in the southwest region. Zone D was the warehouse center of one of them. It was a large automated warehouse with a total area of more than 500,000 square meters. At this time, In the warehouse of Zone D, there were two groups of people confronting each other. However, neither of them were from the police force. One of them was a young man wearing the uniform of the warehouse center's staff. He should be an ordinary employee here. His face still had the youthful look of a student, and he looked like he had just started working. On the other side were three men in suits. The atmosphere was quite tense, and the conflict between the two groups seemed to be on the verge of breaking out. One of the middle-aged men in a suit crossed his hands and said coldly, "Your name is Fire in the game, right?" The young man shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about." The middle-aged man in the suit chuckled. "The system won't lie, since we've already exposed your code name, Fire, and mentioned the game. And you still didn't have any adverse reactions. It's useless no matter how you act. We know you're a player. We're 100% sure. Or else we wouldn't have found you. We don't want to be punished by the system." Seeing that he couldn't argue, the young man could only sigh helplessly. "What's your purpose in finding me?" As he spoke, he looked at the three people in front of him nervously. In his heart, he already knew that he was in trouble. The middle-aged man in the suit shrugged. "I know you gained a lot from the last mission. Hand over your reward points." "Oh right. You still have a D-grade destruction bomb, right? That's a valuable treasure. Hand it over together, and we'll let you go." "Impossible." Fire waved his hand angrily. "Dream on." The middle-aged man didn't care. "Do you think you have a choice now? You're just an E-grade player, but we have a D-grade player and two E-grade players who are close to D-grade. Also, I forgot to tell you, I was born in a traditional martial arts family. I can take on 10 ordinary people like you." The young man in the suit gritted his teeth. He knew that since the other party dared to find him, they must have 100% confidence. "I know who you are." He recalled the three-man team he had encountered in the last mission. In the game, these three people had been scheming and rather selfish. In order to fight for the slightest benefit, they would kill other human players. That was why these three people had improved very quickly in the game, and were very strong. In the last mission, he had joined the same temporary team with these three people for a long time. They had only parted ways when the mission was about to end. However, he didn't expect that he would be caught in the real world. Among these three people, there must be a company executive who had observed him for a long time before confirming his identity and coming to find him in the real world. "Since you know that I have a destruction bomb, aren't you afraid that I'll detonate it and die with you?" Fire's heart was filled with unwillingness. He knew that even if he handed over the item, he might not survive. The middle-aged man in the suit was completely unmoved. "Are you joking? As far as I know, the equipment and items in the game can't be used in the real world." Fire gritted his teeth. "You only know about E-grade items. How do you know that D-grade items can't work? Do you dare to bet? I have nothing to lose. One person in exchange for 3 of your lives. It's worth it." The three people in the suit looked at each other with a dignified expression. Fire guessed correctly. Although there was a D-grade player among the three, they had exchanged for 3 contracts in order to form a team. In addition, their luck in the game was quite average. They had never obtained any D-grade items, so they weren't sure. "You're bluffing. As long as you hand over the reward points and the destruction bomb, we'll let you go. With your talent, there's hope. There's no need to do this." "I'll say the same to you. We're all humans. Just work hard in the game. You don't have to die with me. You don't have that ability. You can't use the bomb. If you have the guts, come and try." Outside the warehouse center, Wu Tong and 5 other police officers, including Wang Long, were on standby. One of the police officers said, "Chief Wu, I think if these people want to fight or kill, let them do as they please. Anyway, according to the information, these people aren't people who know their place. The 3 of them don't matter, but Fire's performance in the game is not bad. According to the Sky's standards, he's worth training," Wu Tong said while looking at the surveillance video in front of her. It was the image of the police hacking into the storage center. Just now, when Fire's code name was called, Wu Tong used the authority granted to her by Chen Guang to find the list of names in the Sky's information. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go in and save them." "Chief, you're so strong. "Are you afraid of those 3 rookies?" This time, Wu Tong brought police players that she had carefully selected. As for the information, part of it came from the sky, while the other part came from the police's investigation. Since more than a month ago, the 3 people who had nothing to do with each other suddenly became close. This time, the 3 of them flew from different parts of the country to the 5 capitals and went straight to the storage center. One of them was indeed a high-ranking member of this large logistics company. Before they set out, this high-ranking member made a series of clever arrangements and transfers. At this time, only the man with the code name Fire was left in the storage center. With Wu Tong's sharp senses, she immediately guessed that something big was going to happen. In fact, a long time ago, she had been worried that the conflict between players might extend into the real world. Now it had finally happened. This shouldn't have been within her scope of work. It should have been the sky's responsibility. However, Wu Tong felt that such a situation would become the norm in the future. Although the sky's personnel were sufficient, under the tone set by Chen Guang, most of their energy seemed to be focused on the game. This kind of conflict that happened in the real world seemed to be the responsibility of the police. As long as they carefully selected and explored carefully, they should be able to find enough people in the military and the police. However, there was an error in the information. Previously, the sky's information said that the strongest of the 3 was only level E. They didn't expect the surveillance system to show that one of the men had already become level D. Although Wu Tong was also level D, without Tang Ying by her side, she couldn't display much of her combat power. In the real world, it was useless even if she called Tang Ying over. How could he transform? The police officers that she brought with her were all level E. They weren't strong enough. For a moment, it was hard to get off the tiger. The steady Wang Long understood Wu Tong quite well. Although he didn't know why the chief was a little hesitant, he could analyze from Wu Tong's behavior that the situation wasn't that simple. This was also the first time that the police dealt with a conflict between players in the real world. Wang Long secretly called Chen Guang behind Wu Tong's back. Chapter 1242. The atmosphere of the confrontation between the 2 sides grew increasingly tense, but Wu Tong was hesitant to give the order to attack. The other player police officers in the station thought that Wu Tong's combat power was comparable to that of a C-class. Moreover, she was also an elite among elites. The player police officers she had brought here today were also of a higher standard, so they couldn't understand why Wu Tong was hesitating. They didn't know how powerful the destructive bombs that the 2 sides mentioned were, and whether they could be used in real life. If they were to compare the destructive power in the game, the explosion of a D-class consumable bomb could turn the entire Xinhua Industrial Park number 32 upside down. In the worst-case scenario, it could even affect the nearby buildings and civilians, threatening the lives of the masses. They couldn't just ignore it. As time passed, Huolai and the trio in suits became more and more disagreeable with each other. Huolai wouldn't easily listen to the trio's promises. He knew that even if he obediently gave in, they wouldn't let him go. The identity of a player in real life was a secret, but it wasn't that important. For those that could be trusted, such as Wu Tong's police station, Chen Guang's Heavens Division, or players that had signed a party contract, they could communicate with each other in real life, and the benefits would definitely outweigh the disadvantages. However, for strangers who weren't familiar with each other, exposing their identity meant exposing themselves to a very dangerous situation. No matter how strong a player was in the game, if they were targeted in real life, they might be killed in their sleep or at any other time with a long-range sniper rifle. No matter how capable you were in the game, others could easily kill you in real life. That was Huolai's current situation. Moreover, the other party was stronger than him in both the game and in real life. They were afraid that he would rise to power in the future and seek revenge against them. At the same time, even if he didn't achieve much in the future, taking revenge against them was very simple. All he had to do was expose the trio's whereabouts and identity, and there would always be greedier and more tyrannical players appearing in front of him. So he made a decision. Under the slightly frightened gazes of the trio in suits, Hualai first took a step back. Then, light flashed in his palm, and a pitch-black ball appeared in his right hand. The moment the ball appeared, it grabbed everyone's attention. It lay quietly on Hualai's palm, looking just like an ordinary bowling ball. However, the cold and murderous aura emanating from it could be transmitted to the hearts of Wu Tong and the others through the surveillance cameras. Bureau of Martial Arts, give the order to attack. We can't delay any longer. That's right. We have no idea how powerful a Grade D bomb is. There are more than 20,000 people in Xinhua Industrial Park. If it really explodes, what if? At the very least, we have to let them know that they're being watched, so that they have some fear. We have to take care of the conflicts between normal civilians, and we have to take care of the conflicts between players. Bureau Chief, give the order. I'll go in and try to communicate with them. After a brief moment of shock, the police officers were a little excited. Those who were chosen by the game were extraordinary people. They all had extremely firm willpower, extraordinary abilities, and courage and responsibility that ordinary people found hard to achieve. These player police officers did not forget their original duties, just because they had the identity of a player in the game. On the contrary, they became even more determined. Regardless of whether it was their studies in the police academy, or what they had seen and heard after they had devoted themselves to work, it had made their sense of responsibility even stronger. This was also the reason why Wu Tong had chosen to bring them along. Given the current situation, whoever rushed in first would be the one sacrificed if the bomb was detonated. However, none of these people retreated. In their minds, they were thinking about the other 20,000 people in Xinhua Industrial Park. Perhaps not everyone in the police force would have such a high level of awareness, but the few people chosen by Wu Tong could really do it. Seeing that there was no time to delay, Wu Tong waved her hand. Everyone back off. I'll go in alone. No, Bureau Chief, even though you're a Grade D player, you won't be able to withstand this bomb. That's right. It doesn't matter if we sacrifice ourselves. There will always be a lot of Grade E police officers in the Bureau that haven't been discovered yet. There will definitely be a lot of people in the Municipal Bureau. However, Bureau Chief, you're a Grade D police officer, 1 in 10,000. If you sacrifice yourself, it won't be worth it. One of the toughest police officers objected without thinking. The others were not so straightforward, but once someone took the lead, the others also took the initiative to ask for battle. Everyone calm down. Bureau Chief, I just called Minister Chun when I went over there to investigate. It won't be long before he arrives. Wang Long swallowed his saliva and said aloud. Minister Chen. Some police officers did not react. Wang Long explained again. The Minister of Heaven Chen Guang. Everyone suddenly understood, and their hearts became a lot more relaxed. However, the way everyone secretly looked at Wu Tong was a little strange. Since a long time ago, there had been rumors in the 5 capital police system that Chen Guang had a close relationship with the fiery bureau chief. But she had always been stubborn and refused to admit it. She only said that the two of them were brother and sister by marriage. If it was someone else, they might have joked that this god sister was most likely that god's sister. However, the other party was Wu Tong. Everyone could only guess, but no one dared to joke with her. They did not even dare to gossip in private, for fear that they would be dragged out to train alone. Now that the minister was personally handling this matter, the bureau chief had to admit it even if he did not want to. Wu Tong turned around and glared at Wang Long. What are you doing? You called the Minister of Heaven for such a small matter. What's the point if word gets out? What will others say about me, Wu Tong? What will they say about our Xinhua branch? Then wouldn't I become a soft bureau chief, who uses my personal connections, and can only rely on a man to protect me? Wang Long was stunned. He did not expect her to be so angry. In addition, your explanation of concealing your true intentions here is very strange. We all know whether you're soft or not, and you're definitely not soft. But aren't you admitting that Minister Chen is protecting you? Seeing that Wang Long did not understand, Wu Tong explained again. Sigh. You won't understand even if I tell you. The Minister of Heaven is a national treasure. And the Minister of Heaven is even more important. Although Chen Guang was an easygoing person, he didn't treat his identity as anything important, and he didn't treat his identity seriously. But we can't be like him. He can even lie at home and play games when he has nothing to do. But he just can't take on missions like ours, understand? This was the first time a player was enforcing the law in the national police system. In the future, it might become a model. If he had to step in for such a small matter, others would think that the strength of the Chinese police players was too weak. Although the news will only spread among the players, since the player rate of our Xinhua branch is so high. What about the C6? Where's the CIA? What about the KGB? This is a major event that will affect the entire world. Wang Long finally understood. As expected of the bureau chief. You really have foresight. Then, Wang Long's eyes unconsciously floated to the tablet in Wu Tong's hand. His face stiffened, and he pointed to it and said, it seems that Director Chen has already entered the Martial Arts Bureau. Ah, when did he go in? Wu Tong looked down and cried out in surprise. It turned out that Chen Guang had already appeared in the warehouse in a rather domineering manner. The trio in suits and Hualai, who were originally confronting each other, jumped in fright. Who are you? The D-grade player among the trio in suits reacted the fastest. He turned around and shouted angrily. Hualai, on the other hand, was calmer. He only glanced in Chen Guang's direction from the corner of his eyes. You are? Chen Guang ignored him. Instead, he carefully looked up and down at the situation. In fact, he had purposely bypassed Wu Tong and snuck in directly, because the one who called was Wang Long and not her. This proved that she did not want to contact him. If he had communicated with Wu Tong first, she might have come up with all sorts of excuses, which would have been a waste of time. Now it's all good. I don't care who it is. No matter who it is that wants to cause trouble, I'll slap them flat first. Then, all of you can go and cultivate obediently. However, when Chen Guangzhen saw Hualai's face, he was fiercely shaken. If he remembered correctly, this should be someone who had already died in the real world. World Sand? Chen Guang asked doubtfully. Hualai and the trio in suits also recognized him. He was the only S-grade player in the world, the undefeated legend among humans. Whether it was in traditional fields or anything else, Chen Guang was unparalleled in the world. The trio was at a loss at first, then despair. Since this person had appeared, it seemed that all their efforts today would be in vain. Hualai, on the other hand, was relieved. From a moral point of view, he was the one who was robbed of his resources. He was also the weaker party. His reputation as an all-rounder had always been good. Since he was here, he must have come to uphold justice. However, what did he mean by world sand? Hualai pointed at himself. Mr. Chun, are you talking about me? I don't know who you are talking about, but I believe in Hua. The Hua of the famous Han Dynasty writer Hua Tsubing. His name is Hualai. Not world sand. That's weird. These two looked exactly the same. Even their temperaments were similar. It was impossible for there to be two people who looked so similar in this world. During the world-shattering war, World Sand was the only one who could fight against Chen Guang. Chen Guang had a deep memory of it. It was impossible for him to remember it wrongly. Chen Guang was puzzled. What was going on? Your ability in the game is to control dust, right? Hualai's mouth was wide open. How did you know? This time, it was Chen Guang's turn to scratch his head. It's a mess. Everything is a mess. The person who died in his hands was resurrected. However, his identity was completely different. He was no longer an assassin who was adopted since young. His surname was also not sure. Forget it. Keep the bomb. It's useless. Since I am already here, you guys better know your place. Chen Guang planned to calm the situation first before interrogating them. Mr. Chen, if there is nothing else, can we leave first? The D-grade player among the trio in suits asked. Chen Guang looked back at him and smiled. What do you think? Chapter 1243. The three men in suits looked at each other. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that such a small matter would attract the S-grade guru Chen Guang. And he seemed to know Hala. This is just a misunderstanding. The D-grade suited man saw that the situation was not good, and took the initiative to admit defeat. Chen Guang first looked at the former world Sand, now Hala, and his ears twitched slightly. Dense footsteps could be heard from afar. Wu Tong must have discovered the situation inside, and was rushing over with her men. Since Wu Tong was coming, then Hala had to keep the bomb in his hand. Hala, didn't you hear what I said? Put your bomb away. Mr. Chen, Hala was a little hesitant. It seemed that Chen Guang wanted to uphold justice for him. But this bomb was the only thing he could rely on at the moment. What if this Mr. Chen was actually greedy? I know what you're thinking. Don't joke around. Even if a D-grade bomb exploded in my mouth, I wouldn't even blink. Hala's body trembled, thinking that this was reasonable. He immediately laughed at himself, and kept the bomb at the same time. The three of you come here. If I find any of you disobedient, you'll be a corpse in the next second. Believe me, I'll do what I say. The three men in suits approached with a bitter face and shrunk shoulders, looking like they really had no other way. Chen Guang nodded, and simply started the case. That's right. Now let Hala speak first. You tell me what's going on. A trace of hatred flashed in Hala's eyes. Mr. Chen, these three people are a team in the game. They teamed up with me for a short period of time in the last mission. I originally thought that it would be over after the mission ended, but I didn't expect them to record my characteristics, and then find me in real life. They want me to hand over all the reward points, and the D-grade bomb that I was holding in my hand just now. The situation was similar to what he had guessed. Chen Guang commented, "This is all because of your poor pseudonym. How can there be someone who sounds exactly the same as you? If I were you, I definitely wouldn't call you Huolia, but Monk Sha, or something like that. In any case, your ability is to play with sand." After lecturing Hala, Chen Guang turned to look at the three men in suits. "What else do you have to say? You're quite capable. You're planning to rob us first, then kill us to silence us, right? Mr. Chen, he was slandering me. That's not the case at all. Oh, do you have another explanation? Come on, try making up a story to convince me." Chen Guang was very good at reading people. In just a few seconds, he could clearly see who was telling the truth and who was lying. In front of the most powerful best actor in history, your half-assed lying abilities are simply not enough at all. Back in the game, he framed the three of us and almost got us killed. We're just here to demand an explanation from him. The bomb that he had was originally our loot. He ambushed us at the last moment and stole it from us. We were so angry that we came up with ways to find him. A middle-aged man from the back of the three men in suits finally spoke up. It was originally very difficult to find him. Luckily, I happened to be a major shareholder of Shunda Tong, and the person in charge of the administrative department. Coincidentally, he has been behaving very strangely recently. His name is Hala. We observed him for a whole month before we confirmed it was him. Hala immediately retorted, "I didn't steal anything from you. You're slandering me." The D-grade suit man retorted, You may look like you're not very capable, but you're actually very cunning. You might be able to fool us, but you can't fool Mr. Chen." Chen Guang could not be bothered to expose them. Since Wu Tong would be arriving soon, he could leave the three of them to Wu Tong. As for Hala, he could consider directly absorbing him into the Heaven Division. In another old world, Hala was the strongest assassin of the Shattered, who had died by his hands. The Shattered was the sworn enemy of the Guangding General Headquarters. In the New World, he had saved his life and absorbed him into the Heaven Division that had evolved from the General Directorate of Light and Stability. Everything was truly destined by the heavens. Raise your hands. Chen Guang, don't think that we're afraid of you. Even though you're an S grade in the game, this is reality. As Chen Guang was thinking, the suit man who had been standing at the back without saying a word suddenly pulled out a gun from his waist. The black muzzle was aimed at Chen Guang's head. Chen Guang turned around to look at him. It was a shiny revolver with a large caliber and a thick and long barrel. One look, and one could tell that it was an extraordinary weapon. The D-grade suit man's expression suddenly changed. He no longer tried to defend himself. Instead, he looked at Chen Guang with a smug expression, thinking that he had Chen Guang in his grasp. Chen Guang's expression did not change. You guys, haven't seen the video I took at American Airlines LAX? Do you think this thing is useful to me? What's that? The three men in suits were confused. Chen Guang turned to look at Hala. You don't know either? Hala shook his head. Mr. Chen, why don't you raise your hands? At most, I'll just hand over the thing. Chen Guang was at a loss. It seemed that the conflict at LAX had never happened in the New World. It was not surprising. China was the strongest country in the New World, and the status of the Chinese overseas was quite high. There was no basis for racial discrimination. People would kneel down and lick their boots. Regardless of whether it was himself or any other Chinese, it was impossible for them to suffer such severe unfair treatment on American Airlines. No wonder they thought he was afraid of guns. Forget it. It's not like it matters anyway. Chen Guang smiled and shrugged. He turned back to look at the man with the gun. All right, you can try to shoot. If you can kill me, I'll consider you good. He did not ask them if they had never watched High God before. They definitely knew, but in their minds, this was the strength he had displayed in the game, and he could not use it in real life. Put the gun down. At that moment, a shout came from the door of the warehouse. Chen Guang did not need to turn around to know that it was Wu Tong. Her voice was very loud. When she saw Chen Guang being pointed at with a gun, she lost her usual rationality and calmness. If the hostage had been someone else, the experienced Wu Tong would not have jumped out so rashly. She would have chosen to calmly hide in a corner. She would have either urgently dispatched a sniper or relied on her own ability to snipe from the shadows. But now, she was a little out of her mind. The three men in suits and Hala's reaction was even more intense. When they turned their heads, they saw Wu Tong raising her gun and walking forward step by step. The black muzzle of the gun was aimed directly at the middle-aged man with the revolver. Behind her were a few other police officers. Although they felt that Wu Tong's actions were a little rash, since the director had made the decision, they could not drag her down. Only the player police officers, who were especially good at sniping and shooting, quietly snuck over from another direction, planning to ambush from the side. At that moment, Chen Guang turned around to comfort Wu Tong. He pressed his hand down and said, "Don't be nervous. This is nothing. All right, put the gun down. You are no different from a toy in my eyes." Chen Guang did not care that he was being pointed at with a gun. He reached out and grabbed the gun, as if he was going to snatch someone else's toy. No! Wu Tong and Wang Long shouted at the same time. The middle-aged man in the suit with the gun was stunned for a moment. When he found an opportunity to pull out his gun and point it at Chen Guang, he thought he had successfully turned the tables. Even when the police appeared, he did not take it seriously. After experiencing life and death in the game, the three of them were cruel and merciless people in real life. Now that they had become players and embarked on the path of raiders, even expanding their hunting range to the real world outside of the game, the three of them did not plan to live a peaceful life. Encountering this situation today was already within their expectations. In fact, during their last mission, they had even broken out in a fierce battle with the other party. This time, they encountered Chen Guang and the police, which made the situation more serious. Looking at Chen Guang's palm that was getting closer and closer, the man in the suit with the gun was confused at first. Then, his expression quickly turned ferocious. "You think I don't dare to shoot?" At the same time, the other two quietly put their hands into their pockets, intending to take out their weapons. Chen Guang was expressionless. "No, of course you dare. It's just that I don't care. Also, I deliberately slowed down. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to react, and your gun would be gone." Bang! There was a loud noise. Thick smoke and dust rose from the revolver, and the deafening echo echoed in the warehouse, making everyone's ears buzz. In the end, he could not hold it in. This special powerful revolver did not disappoint him. Just by listening to the sound, he knew that it was several times more powerful than ordinary ones. The scene became silent for a moment. Even Wu Tong's face was pale as she looked in Chen Guang's direction. Chen Guang still maintained his right hand forward and did not move. The man in the suit was stunned because he clearly saw that in the gap between the index and middle fingers of Chen Guang's right hand, there was a powerful explosive shell that he had personally loaded. Unexpectedly, it was clamped by someone's hand. Taking advantage of the moment when he was stunned, Chen Guang shook his hand and took the gun from his hand. Then his figure flashed, and the other two men were also disarmed. He crushed these things into scrap metal in front of everyone and threw them on the ground. Chen Guang shrugged. Okay, tie them up. He didn't plan on letting these three people go. He couldn't care less about the fighting and killing in the game. This was the survival of the fittest. This was also in line with the rules of human evolution. Those who were eliminated were the weak. If they really had talent, people like Hala or Shersha would become strong in the game sooner or later. Hala, for example, was only grade E, but he had already obtained grade D tools. In addition, his ability also gave him extremely strong survivability and combat power. Luck was an indispensable condition on the road to becoming strong, and talent was even more indispensable. Hala had both. In time, it was not impossible for the current Hala to reach the height of Shersha. At that time, he would play an important role in the battle between humans and Protoss. However, if such a genius fell in the modern world, and died in the hands of three people with evil thoughts and no specialties, who only knew how to steal from others, that would be the biggest joke in the world. Now that they had spread their influence to the real world, they had to apologize. Chen Guang planned to be a model. These three people had to die, not only in the game, but also in the real world. Later, he would think of a way to use the Heavenly Division's methods. Whether in the game or in the real world, he would report this as a model. Naturally, many people with evil thoughts would think twice. This was the purpose of the existence of an official organization like the Heavenly Division, to maintain order and preserve the strength and potential of humans in the game as much as possible. Unknowingly, Chen Guang had entered the mode of the Heavenly Division's minister. Hey, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Alright Hala, this is my name card. When you return, report here. Just say that I asked you to go. Congratulations, you've been recruited by me. Hala's face was blank. He still had not recovered from the shock of Chen Guang catching the bullet with his finger. Seeing that he was in a daze, Chen Guang grunted. That's right, you've been recruited by the Heavenly Division. Heavenly Division? Hala was stunned for a moment. Then he fell into a state of ecstasy. As a player who had gone through several missions, he naturally knew about the Heavenly Division. In the previous mission, the temporary leader of the team was just an ordinary member of the Heavenly Division. Although he was only a D rank, the astonishing strength and intelligence that the other party displayed during the mission made him fascinated. At that time, he had taken the initiative to ask to join the Heavenly Division in the game, but was rejected. That, Mr. Chen, don't you need a political review? He still found it hard to believe. Snapping his fingers, Chen Guang replied, My words are the background check, so you just have to go. Oh right, Sister Wu Tong. These three people can be sentenced to death, right? If it's not convenient for you, I'll do it myself. Wu Tong swallowed hard, and then patted Chen Guang's shoulder. You little brat. I'm almost scared to death. Won't killing these three dirty your hands for no reason? Don't worry, leave it to me. Mr. Chen, please spare us. The three middle-aged men in suits knelt down and begged for mercy. Chen Guang, who was about to leave, turned his head slightly. If it was in the past, I might have been soft-hearted and let you guys go. After all, the three of you did not kill anyone in front of me. However, I'm sorry, things are different now. If there's a next life, you should try to be good people. Chapter 1244. After saying that, he was still a little worried. Forget it, I'll help you take care of these three first. Although the three men in suits had been disarmed, who knew if they had other hidden cards up their sleeves as players? To prevent any unexpected incidents from occurring out of nowhere, Chen Guang really played the villain this time. Before leaving, he simply slapped the three men in suits 7 or 8 times, then turned around and left without looking back. This time, the three men in suits were completely in despair. Originally, They really had the idea of summoning their inventory in the game after Chen Guang left, and catching the police officers off guard. Now all their bones had been broken by Chen Guang. Not to mention counterattacking, they were almost out of breath. Wu Tong, Wang Long, and the others looked at each other. Chen Guang's calm expression, when he was dealing the finishing blow, really made them feel a little anxious. This guy felt like he wasn't smashing 3 people, but 3 ants. Looking at Chen Guang's back, Wu Tong frowned slightly. Why did this kid suddenly seem like a different person? He wasn't like this before. Officer, can I leave now? Hala appeared to be calmer than Wu Tong. In his mind, the strongest human should have this kind of bearing. Clear rewards and punishments, swift and decisive. Hala asked himself if he had done anything wrong ever since he became a player. Although his parents were ordinary wage earners, they taught him to be a person with principles and morals. When he was poor, he shouldn't look down on himself. And when he was rich, he shouldn't forget himself. It was precisely because of this belief in life that Hala, who came from a famous school and majored in logistics, first rejected many high-paying jobs in large companies and chose to start from the bottom in this company. After becoming a player, he didn't choose to resign, but to better complete his job. Of course, the experience in the game also changed him a lot. He became calmer and more determined, and even a little bloodthirsty in the face of illusionary beasts. He also realized that he had this side to him, but whether it was in reality or in the game, he still behaved calmly, only doing his job step by step, and at the same time in the game, steadily advancing step by step. So far, he had never done anything shameful. He believed in a completely different creed from the 3 men in suits. Perhaps it was because Mr. Chun had a pair of eyes that could see through one's heart, that he was willing to trust me and let me become a member of the Tian Division? That was the strongest organization in all of Huaxia. No, the entire world. This was a common occurrence. When a quest was issued, several human players from the player's birthplace would stand up to find someone to match the secret code. Then, they would quickly form a reliable and trustworthy party that others would envy. Although it was free to fight solo, it was human nature to team up. Only by forming a team and relying on the strength of a team could human players quickly strengthen themselves in the game and protect their lives. After all, the Protoss were unscrupulous when they encountered lone humans. However, if a large party of 10, or even dozens of human players appeared at the same time, even a B-level Protoss would have to think twice. Obviously, the players of the Tian Division did not sign a contract. They were often successful in forming a party. There was only one reason. They had many people, many strong players, and they belonged to the same organization in reality. Furthermore, they were strictly managed. Even without the restriction of a party contract, these people were willing to abide by the rules and restrictions of their own organization and trusted their companions. There were many other organizations like this, but there was no doubt that the Tian Division was the strongest. Most of the Chinese players, who could naturally communicate with each other, wanted to join the Tian Division. However, their organization was very strict, and they only recruited members in reality. Ordinary players could not get in even if they wanted to. In addition, although the Tian Division did not easily recruit members, their attitude towards other players in the game was relatively harmonious. They would almost never bully others. Instead, they directed all their hostility towards the powerful Protoss faction. Every time they formed a temporary party, they would recruit many ordinary players to join them in the game. As long as they were willing to obey orders throughout the mission and do what they were supposed to do, at least in this mission, these players who joined the Tian Division's temporary party would have the highest survival rate and a more generous reward. So far, the Tian Division had proven their strength through the few game missions they had participated in. Unless they bumped into a crazy A-class or S-class Protoss, the Tian Division was simply unstoppable. Not only that, the popularity and strength of the Tian Division had also brought about another change. Looking at the entire world, because of the strength of China, the Western countries had tried their best to promote the threat of the East. This had greatly hindered the promotion of the Chinese language. Everyone knew that the Chinese were especially good at assimilating others. The best medium for assimilation was language, followed by cultural invasion. Of course, the Western countries would not just wait for their doom. This was great. In reality, they could not simply use force. Even if China was already so strong, they still had to maintain restraint. However, there was no such thing in the game. The game was crueler than reality. It followed a simpler law of the jungle. The rather merciless law of the jungle forced all players of other languages to submit to a bigger fist deep in their hearts. The fist had the final say. Those who did not listen would often regret it. Those who did not understand were even more miserable. Therefore, the most direct observation of the Tian division's change in reality was that there were more people around the world who took the initiative to learn the Chinese language. Those who were chosen as players were mostly intelligent people. They learned things with great pressure and efficiency. Now, if there were any company executives or genius students overseas who suddenly developed a strong interest in the Chinese language, there was a high chance that they would be players if they wanted to give it a try. In the past 2 months, many international friends had changed from being unable to speak the same language at the beginning and could only hope that the Huaxia people were willing to speak English or other minor languages with them. Now they could communicate in simple Mandarin. For example, something, "Brother, you are so handsome. Sister, you are so beautiful. Can you bring me along? Can I join you guys? I am very obedient. I am a good person. Please take me in." The influence that the Tian division brought to China was evident. So many people dreamed of joining such a big organization. Now, he had become an internal member, just because of a sentence from Mr. Chen. This was simply too blissful. Thinking of this, Haley clenched his fists and secretly decided that he would not let Mr. Chen down. Wu Tong turned back to look at him, then looked at the 3 men in suits who were lying on the ground motionlessly. "All right, just follow Chen Guang's instructions. Now go to the place," he said. "I also do not know why he thinks so highly of you, but his foresight is always right." After leaving the Xianhua Industrial Park, Chen Guang did not stroll around. Instead, he returned to school. No one would believe this, but the reason he returned to school was because he had to take a makeup exam the day after tomorrow. He had to pass the makeup exam for 2 consecutive semesters. If it was not for Chen Guang's strong reputation and his previous promise that he would not mess it up, the school and institute leaders might have helped him take a leave of absence. Truth be told, Chen Guoli and Feng Rong no longer cared about his studies. Speaking of which, Chen Guang felt that he couldn't let the 12 years he spent to get into university go to waste. No matter what, he had to graduate and get his hands on his books. This had become an obsession that he could not get rid of. Of course, he was also thinking about another matter. The Tian division could not contact Wenwen, and the Wen family could not contact her either. These 2 days, he had called her at least 5 or 6 times, but no one picked up. He sent WeChat, QQ, or even text messages, but she did not reply. It was as if she had disappeared from this world. Chen Guang felt a little uneasy. In the past, he had confidence in Wenwen's ability. He thought that in this world, other than himself, no one could hurt a single hair on her. But as time passed, his heart was not at ease. "You should have replied to me." With no other choice, he decided to first go to Wenwen's roommate in school. This could be considered as an indirect way to inquire about her situation. At the very least, he had to know what she was doing before she disappeared, and what was going on in her head. Chapter 1245. After returning to school, Chen Guang went straight to the School of Economics and Management, where Wenwen studied in the Department of International Trade. As he became more and more famous, more and more people knew him, and his popularity grew. Gradually, the students of Gokyo University could no longer maintain absolute calmness. The more famous he was, the more attractive his photo and autograph were. Moreover, everyone knew that Chen Guang was easy to talk to. As long as he was not in a hurry, he would not refuse anyone. Therefore, there were more and more people who wanted to ask him for a photo or an autograph. He was not in school for a long time last semester. People in the dormitory and class blocked him many times. Others returned without success, and this trend gradually died down. Right now, if Chen Guang were to swagger around the school, who knew how lively it would be? In order to avoid causing too much of a stir in the school, Chen Guang had to wear a full suit when he walked on the road, trying not to let himself become the focus of the crowd. Fortunately, the second semester of the fourth year had just started. It was early spring, and the weather was cool. The three-piece suit on his face was not too hot, and it was not too eye-catching. With the help of his acting skills, he forcibly reduced his sense of existence in the crowd, and it was really easy for him to find the outside of Wenwen's professional class. He waited outside the classroom on the 5th floor for about 10 minutes. When the class was over at noon, Chen Guang took the initiative to directly find Wenwen's 3 roommates in the crowd. He had seen these 3 people more than once before, and he had also eaten with them. However, Wenwen's relationship with other people in the school was weak. She seemed to be a maverick, and she only nodded to others. Even with her roommates, although she never had a conflict with them, there was always a layer of barrier between them. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. The other girls also had complicated feelings for Wenwen. Outstanding people always had a different kind of attraction to others, whether it was a man or a woman, but Wenwen was very indifferent, making it impossible for others to get close to her. In addition, as the saying went, the story in a university girls' dormitory was a book that could not be finished. Their relationship was clearly very good, but they would suddenly harbor resentment. She and she are a small group, but she and she are another small group. She and she are still a small group. There were a total of 4 people in the dormitory, so they could create 3 WeChat groups. Wenwen's dormitory was not so complicated, because the other 3 girls were united against outsiders. Sometimes they envied Wenwen's appearance, temperament, and studies, but sometimes they were jealous. However, Wenwen had always shown a kind of emotional indifference. Her usual speech and treatment of others were simply impeccable. Her roommates would feel confused and feel that they should not be jealous of her. As for Wenwen's bestie, Chen Guang, her roommates' opinions had also changed over the years. At first, everyone thought that he and Wenwen were from 2 completely different worlds. But later, everyone hoped that the 2 of them could be together. A toad wanted to eat swan meat. If the swan was really eaten by a toad, the swan would not be so noble, right? They thought that she was very capable, but in the end, her boyfriend was also ordinary. They really thought that she was a fairy who did not eat the food of the world, but in the end, she still had to eat, and she was not very picky. But after a while, they would feel that it was not worth it for Wenwen. Especially after Zhang, he showed a good impression of Wenwen, and tried to take the roundabout route to save the country, giving all kinds of gifts to Wenwen's roommates. This psychological deviation became even more serious. From time to time, he would whisper in Wenwen's ear, saying that Chen Guang was not worthy of her and so on. This was also the reason why Chen Guang did not have any dealings with these 3 people later. What were you guys talking about? Although Miss Wen was beautiful and charming, the old man was not a cabbage that no one wanted, okay? What's more, the old man and Miss Wen had a pure friendship. This brother was loyal, and really did not have those messy things that you guys said. At that time, his heart was really pure, but the changes that happened later made him a little unprepared. Of course, the current Chen Guang was no longer the same as before. He was like a black chicken that flew into the sky and became a phoenix. The opinions of Wenwen's roommates had already changed 180 degrees. Moreover, they heard that Zheng He had committed a crime and was found out some time ago, and he actually committed suicide to escape punishment. At this time, the image of Chen Guang in the hearts of Miss Wen's roommates was even higher. He was an international big shot, a superstar of the generation, an all-around genius, and an invincible figure who was awesome no matter what he did. The most important thing was that he was super rich, and in fact he was a little handsome. After the change of opinion, everyone said that it was no wonder that Miss Wen was dismissive of others at that time, but looked at him with special eyes. Maybe Miss Wen had already seen through his potential. It was really infuriating to compare with others. In their hearts, Wenwen really took all the advantages in the world. However, after the gap between the two sides was too big, these people on the contrary lost their jealousy, and their mentality returned to peace. They only secretly regretted that they did not use their relationship with Wenwen to get along well with Chen Guang. However, although they now saw the reality clearly, Chen Guang no longer appeared in the school, and even Wenwen was gone. These three roommates also sighed helplessly and regretted their past. Chen Guang originally wanted to keep a low profile, but he did not expect that as soon as he and the three people revealed their identities, two of them held their hands and cried out in surprise. "Oh my God! Chen Guang! Oh my God! Chen Guang, why are you here? We all thought that you would never come back to school again." The other person did not call out his name, and was just babbling there, completely losing his mind. Chen Guang looked at the three people with a pair of dead fish eyes through his sunglasses. "Damn, you guys are monsters, right? Is there a need to be like this? Forget it, it's not strange if it's like this." If these three people could treat Chen Guang calmly in the past, and not look down on him because of his poverty, then they would not be crying out in surprise again and again because of his meteoric rise. The three people's ruckus immediately caused a commotion in the entire hallway of the school building. Seeing that the situation was not good, Chen Guang could only take off his sunglasses and helplessly glanced at the three people. Then, using a voice that only the three people could hear, he transmitted his inner strength and said, "I really admire you guys. Forget it. We'll meet in half an hour at the Kano Cafe outside the school. Please don't do this again. If there's a stampede, can you take responsibility?" After saying that, Chen Guang simply took off his hat and mask and shouted toward the hallway, "Everyone don't rush. I'm here to do something today. I'm not taking photos. I'm not signing autographs. Later, I'll take a few days to do this. Everyone don't get agitated." But it was useless. "You said not to get agitated, so I'm not agitated. You don't know how difficult it is to see you now." Seeing this, Chen Guang's head swelled up, and he thought that it was not a good idea to continue like this. No wonder the famous university students in the past did not go to school at all. They were always in trouble, and it was really unbearable. However, he was different from others. Famous university students became famous first, and then they were admitted through a special channel by the university. He, on the other hand, studied quietly for 3 years, and then suddenly soared to the sky. That was why things were so difficult for him. Studies were so important in the eyes of others. And in the future, he would also get a National College Entrance Examination graduation certificate. The special channel for ordinary famous people could not be compared to him. Since that was the case, when he was free, the old man might as well take photos with you for 10 days straight, and sign autographs for 10 days straight. There was no problem with his stamina. There were tens of thousands of people in the school, and I would take photos with tens of thousands of people, and then I would sign hundreds of thousands of autographs for you. I would take photos with you until you vomited. I would sign autographs until you vomited. Let's see if you were still coquettish and chaotic. Of course, he also had other ideas. The school would definitely not only have Lin Jingwei and a few other players. Gokyo University was, after all, one of the top 985 universities in the country. Coupled with his influence in the school, the number of fans among his classmates was quite high. Many of the previous flame wars and debates on the internet, the Big Five alumni were one of the main forces, so the number of players in the school should not be low. It was just that now, everyone was a straggler, without a system or organization. He might as well take this opportunity to sort out the players in the school, and then with the team of Lin Jingwei and a few others as the core, he would create a Big Five alumni association in the game. Although the alumni association could not be compared to heaven, it would definitely only be beneficial to the development of the power of the entire human race in the game. Hearing that he would not take photos or sign autographs today, the students and teachers who were swarming over felt a little disappointed. However, it was difficult to stop the flow of people, and they were still pushed forward by the people behind. Even if they could get a closer look at him, they could go back and brag about it to others. Seeing that the situation was not good, Chen Guang made up his mind. Damn it, goodbye. He leaped up and actually flew out from the balcony of the 5th floor. That was not all. While flying in the air, he turned around and waved at the crowd, saying loudly, "This is a dangerous move without professional training. Please do not imitate it. I have already said that when it comes to jumping off buildings, the old man is a master. Let's see how chaotic you guys are. Sigh. It's a pity that there is no world in a cup when jumping off a building. Otherwise, my body movements would be 100 times more elegant." While he was complaining in his heart, he suddenly dropped his head and looked down at the satchel on his waist. The heavenly Holy Grail was reacting. Isn't this inappropriate? It came again without saying goodbye. Is the world in a cloud elephant cup so unreasonable? Wait, I seem to have a choice. Chen Guang did not care that he was flying in the air, nor did he care about the people who were looking at him from the balcony. Instead, he focused on feeling the waves coming from the heavenly Holy Grail. That's right, it seemed like he had a choice. He could choose to delay the activation of the mission, and he could even change the mission attributes of the world in a cup within a certain range. The specific situation was as follows. If it was activated immediately, it would indeed be a world of jumping off a building. If he chose to delay it and activate it within the next 7 days, then the world of massacre would appear. The range of choices was huge. Choose one of the two. Either jump off a building or massacre. Which one should he choose? Chen Guang only considered for less than half a second. According to the humble opinion of the old man, jumping off a building was definitely more reliable. The casualty rate of the human gamers in the world of massacre was indescribable. At that time, the gamers were the elites of the elites. And there was even a super genius like Chu Zijin, who had transformed into peasant. There were nearly 100 of them, but only a few survived. It was a tragic sight. Though he did not know how amazing the world of jumping off a building would be, the casualty rate would not be higher than that of the world of massacre. After all, the gamers were strengthened in the game, so they should be able to withstand a mere jump off a building. Spirit of the Holy Grail, I choose to jump off a building, he shouted in his heart. Chapter 1246. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire consciousness was sucked into Cloud City with a whoosh. But the Yunqing that appeared in front of him this time made him feel very strange, and he even thought that he had come to the wrong place. The walls were still the same as before, towering into the sky. The statues that he got later were still standing proudly, especially the statue of his strongest physical body, which was the most eye-catching. After all, such a huge statue of a naked man was the only one in the world, and no one was as thick-skinned as him. But now the appearance of the statue was a little strange to Chen Guang. To be precise, it had no face. The face of the statue had no facial features at all. It was as if a round duck egg stone had been put on it, and then the work was cut short. If the lower half of the statue was not the same as the one that Chen Guang was familiar with, he really couldn't believe that it was him. Don't ask him why he was so familiar with his figure. Every person with a good figure could answer this question. But what really made him feel strange was not the statue, but the densely packed houses in the whole Yunqing. That's right. The Yunqing in the past was empty. At first glance, it was a huge square. But now the Yunqing that appeared in front of Chen Guang was densely packed with countless houses. These houses looked similar, with only minor differences. They were all the simplest kind of small square boxes. However, there were too many of them. Looking at them, Chen Guang couldn't even count them. He only guessed that there should be in the millions. In addition, he also found some differences in all the houses. Most of the houses looked the same. They were 3x3 square boxes that looked like shared private rooms. But from time to time, 1 or 2 different houses would appear. They were no longer 3x3 coffin boxes, but 4x4 latrine huts with roofs, eaves, and windows. Above the latrine huts, there were dozens of more beautiful and exquisite small courtyard houses scattered throughout the whole Yunqing. They covered an area of about 8x8. In addition, Chen Guang also keenly found 7 of the most unique and huge castles. Each castle was about 30 to 40 meters tall, and each had a different style. They occupied an area of at least 10 acres. There was a medieval European-style Gothic castle, a tall Chinese pagoda, a modern mechanical feeling, and a pure black one that looked a bit like an off-road vehicle. Although the other three weren't as distinctive, they were no different from the previous four in terms of grade and aesthetics. The difference between the 7 castles and the coffin box next to them was like the difference between an elephant and a rabbit. Chen Guang was at a loss. When did his empty Yunqing suddenly become a bustling city that could accommodate millions of people? What kind of scientific principle was that? Also, what was up with the magnificent buildings in the center of Cloud City that looked like ancient palaces? Who the hell was going overboard, without the permission of the real owner, the old man, to build an illegal building here? You even took my spot. And it was cultivated to such a crappy level. It was as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know that he was super rich and classless. Do you believe that I can call 100,000 city enforcement officers to tear it down in minutes? Why are you still in a daze outside? Come in. While he was cursing in his mind, a familiar voice suddenly came from the palace. It was Liuli. You're back, Chen Guang asked in surprise. Then he suddenly came back to his senses. Could this shabby house really be mine? He suddenly felt that it was pleasing to the eye. Liuli replied to him angrily. What do you mean I'm back? I want to leave, but I don't have the ability, okay? Then where did you go before? Why didn't I see you when I came in? Isn't it because you're so bad that the entire Holy Grail changed? I had to clean up the mess for you. You can blame me for that. Chen Guang floated into the palace and saw that Liuli was lying on a comfortable sofa in the middle of the magnificent hall with her legs crossed. However, the computer desk in front of her was still the same as before, which was very incongruous with the style of the hall. Chen Guang couldn't be bothered to argue with her. He asked, what's going on outside and in this palace? What exactly happened? How come there were no signs at all? Liuli put down the mouse, looked back at him, shrugged, and made an innocent face. What if I said that when the world in the cup ends this time, it won't be like this the next time you come in? What would you think? Chen Guang frowned and thought for a moment. He asked, you mean these houses are prepared for the players? Liuli finally showed her rare enthusiasm. That's right. Now every time the world in the cup is triggered, the players will have to go through a transit process. Your Cloud City realm is the transit station. Every house here represented a player's residence. To other players, these residences were absolute territories that they could not enter. In addition, fighting is absolutely prohibited in Cloud City. It is a safe zone for all players. After a while, the players' spiritual bodies will gradually take shape in their respective houses. In addition, there will be about an hour of buffer before the official start of each mission. You may not have noticed, but in the southeast corner of Cloud City, there is a very large open space. The players will conduct transactions there using reward points as currency. Chen Guang pondered for a moment. So, different houses represent different levels of players? The shabbiest coffin box is the residence of E-level players, and the slightly better ones are for D-level players? Sihiyuan is for C-level players? But why are there 7 castles? Isn't this a bit too different from Sihiyuan? Liuli rolled her eyes at him. You're really forgetful. Chen Guang was stunned at first, and then he revealed a look of joy. You mean these 7 castles are the tinder I left in the slaughter world? Liuli sighed. I can't sense what you did in the slaughter world, but I think it should be like this. After all, when the players first appeared in the game mission, they had C-level or close to B-level strength. Then, in the next few missions, they seemed to have entered a different space from the others. Each time, the harvest was very rich, and now they are all A-level. This time, Chen Guang could not help but be surprised. There's actually such a thing. However, he could not understand why these people did not appear in the eyes of the players earlier. So much so that the human players still thought that he was the strongest human being, an S-level, and those below him were all C-levels. Liuli, who had seen through his doubts, said, maybe it's because they came into contact with the new cup world before the real mission started. When the history of this whole new world was fabricated, there was an ethical conflict, which is equivalent to a bug in the computer program. So from the beginning, they were isolated in different mission spaces and could not come out of the castles to come into contact with others? Chen Guang nodded. That's most likely the case. Oh right, what about this palace? This is yours. The higher the player's level, the more luxurious the residence looks. Doesn't this palace suit your identity as the only Super S-level player? Wait, Super S-level? Yup. But don't others say that I'm an S-level? That's because they are weak, so they can only set their sights so high. Don't you have any F***king idea how capable you are? There's still some truth to that. I'm just being humble. Oh, and that statue. Why do you have so many questions? It's the same principle as a house. When the new cup world is triggered, your appearance will change every time you come in. So the statue has become a faceless man now. It's how it usually looks. Chen Guang was relieved. Although it was quite awkward to put the statue of the naked man in front of countless people all over the world, as long as his face was covered, no one would know that it was him. It was fine. There was no way that someone would be able to recognize him from the statue's penis, right? This shameless fellow. Doesn't he know how to put a towel on his waist? That's right. This is too shameful. Wu Tong and Tang Ying walked out of their respective huts one after another and gathered together as they spoke. Sister Shiriyue, the more I look at the statue, the more familiar it seems. It looks like Chen Guang's figure. How did you know? There are many boys with good figures in this world. There's no mark on the statue. How could Jiang Yage tell Jean Shiriyue that she recognized him from the overbearing shape of the cavernous body? In a corner of Cloud City, Wenwen walked out of a courtyard house. She raised her head to look at the statue from afar and blushed. Then, she quickly lowered her head and walked towards the market. No one noticed that behind the seemingly ordinary walls of Wenwen's courtyard house, there was an exquisite house made of jade. Sweetheart, do you think that every S-level player has a statue? Then when we reach S-level, if we also have a statue like this, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? That's not possible. Also, this statue is very strange. Previously, when the minister didn't move, this thing was also here. I just realized that Faceless looks very similar to the minister, but it might not be him. Sweetheart, when you get back, pull down his pants and take a picture for me to see and compare? Get lost. Chen Guang really didn't expect that there would actually be so many people who recognized him from the statue. After all, many people had been miserably screwed over by his strongest pile driver in history. Their memories were so deep that they could recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Outside, people were coming out of various houses one after another. However, Chen Guang wasn't in a hurry to go out for a stroll. Instead, he fiddled with a computer in the depths of his palace. In front of him were densely packed statistics. Looking at these things, he, the owner of the Holy Grail, at least regained some sense of ownership. Total number of E-level players. 11374598 total number of D-level players. 89125 total number of C-level players. 71 total number of B-level players. 1 total number of A-level players. 7. It wasn't just these simple statistics. The information was even detailed to the specific abilities of each player. Chen Guang could look up these things at will. He could even use the non-existent surveillance cameras to directly see what was happening in each player's home. This meant that in the realm of the Holy Grail, all human players had no secrets in front of him. That's right, that's more like it. The old man was now considered a master. Chen Guang thought to himself as he watched a blonde girl with big waves and blue eyes, who he didn't know at all. She was twisting her naked body in front of the mirror in his room, as if admiring his makeshift body. That's right, which heartless genius could actually surpass others and reach B-level in one fell swoop? He simply didn't give others a way out. Fortunately, the old man was born with cheats. He had even brought 7 other people with him. This B-level fellow must have relied on his own abilities to rush up. This was too much of a beast. Clicking on this person's information, Chen Guang was elated. It was actually my big miss one. At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out in the public square outside. It's open, it's open. The door is open. An expert is coming out. This must be at least A-level, right? Quite a number of people were gathered outside one of the castles. The castle's door slowly opened. Chu Zijin covered her eyes and walked out slowly. She had been confined in this strange world for too long. Finally, she could go out and take a breather. Looking at the densely packed crowd outside, Chu Zijin's face gradually bloomed into a smile. She thought to herself, our Tianguang group is the strongest. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.